resisting the technological enslavement system. This is the Live Free or Die radio show with your host, Lee Rogers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the show. Today is January 31st, 2011. This is the Monday edition of the show, and we will be going commercial-free today. We're going to suspend commercials through the duration of the show, and joining me on today's broadcast, as he does every month, is my guest, Josh Reeves. You can check out his website at theglobalreality.com for his radio show, for his films, and all sorts of different work on the New World Order system and beyond. A lot of great stuff there, so definitely check it out. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing excellent, Lee. It's great to be back with you, and I know we got a whole bunch of stuff to get into tonight, so I'm ready to get into it with you, and it's good to be back. The times, they are changing, as they say, so we'll definitely be documenting all that stuff here tonight. Absolutely, yeah. There's just been so much that has happened in the past month or so, and I definitely want to get your take on some of the things that have been going on, especially as it pertains to the Middle East situation. Of course, that's been huge news over the past couple of weeks, so I figured we'd start with that. Of course, as I'm sure everybody in the audience knows by now, and this has been all over the news, huge news in the corporate media, you have a situation in Egypt where there are widespread revolts, widespread chaos in the streets. You're seeing protests in Jordan, you're seeing protests in Yemen, you're seeing protests pretty much all over the Middle East, and this was sparked by the protests and uprisings in Tunisia, which eventually resulted in the ouster of the sitting president who was there for 20 plus years. So, I mean, there's so many levels to this, Josh. I mean, first of all, you have the geopolitical stuff that's going on, but also there's some other things that are going on that I don't think have been touched upon as much as they should, and that has to deal with the antiquities, with the fact that a lot of these protests are occurring in places where you have these sites of great archaeological significance. Now, of course, Egypt, you have the pyramids. Yemen, you have some other stuff that you've done a lot of research into. Of course, there's a belief that the Ark of the Covenant is there. So, Josh, I'd like to give you the floor, and I'd like you to give the audience your take on what's happening with the situation in the Middle East. Well, it's interesting. We've seen this build up, and as you mentioned, one of the things that comes to my attention a lot since I had started researching what had happened in 2003 in Iraq during the invasion there, and that was this what they called looting, much in the same way they're calling this looting going on in Egypt right now. What they were calling looting, and that up to and including the looting of the Baghdad Museum. And what we had there was on tape, of course, as most people by now know. But I don't know how many people know that there actually is BBC footage of this that was aired on the BBC that shows the guys, going past the decoy antiquities that are in the proper museum and going into the vaults and opening these up. I mean, we have our military, the United States military, special forces going in and blowing this open and getting these antiquities out with all of these very interesting things that have to do with, things such as ancient stargates in ancient Samaria and what is now Iraq, how this pertains to ancient technology that the elites are supposed to be going after. There's been every kind of speculation what exactly that is, but then there's also hard evidence that comes out when we see things like what happened in Norway with the Norway Spiral and CERN, and how they've, for months and months and months, there was things coming out almost every week about new updates with CERN, and now news on CERN has almost come to a complete stop, even though the last mainstream news reports that we had about a month ago were saying things like, they were on the brink of discovering dark matter, and they were on the brink of discovering the Higgs boson particle and all the rest of this. And then right as they're on the brink of this, we don't hear anything else. And then you coincide that with Thursday, we had this report come out from Discovery News about the Great Pyramid may hold 2 hidden chambers. All of a sudden, the next day, we find out there's revolution in the streets. We find out that the Egyptian military had been meeting with our Pentagon just days before. We find all of these things out, and then we start finding out, okay, well, they've cordoned off the city. They've built up military blockades around the pyramids. Is something going on? Is there something that these great earth changes that we seem to be going through? I know you've documented all the stuff that's going on with volcanoes and earthquakes and all the rest of this stuff. I mean, is there a cyclical explanation for this? Does this have something to do with the precession of the equinoxes, with the galactic alignment? with something in the earth that happens on a cyclical nature, which causes maybe possibly some of these ancient monoliths like the Great Pyramids to activate or to become, a part of some kind of energy grid or something of that nature. It just seems interesting that we've had an overthrow in Yemen as well, week before last. That's gotten hardly any play. This is the same thing is going on there. And of course, as you mentioned, all this stuff about the Palace of Sheba in Yemen being found there. This was all being found out just prior to 9/11. And prior to 9/11, they were really on the brink of finding out whatever was in there. And there's a gentleman by the name of Gary Vay. And this guy's very interesting. He's the guy that actually was there during right before 9/11. And when he tried to leave, right after they had discovered this new language, this Proto-Canaanite language, which would be prior to the Canaanite civilization. We know about the Canaanites went on and their involvement in the bloodlines and also in the formation of things like Judaism and the rest of that. People familiar with Eustace Mullins can read his book, The Curse of Canaan, to find out more about that. But this Proto-Canaanite language, which they had never been identified before, which was also found in places like Colorado, United States, matched up perfectly with this language they had found in this Palace of Sheba, where allegedly the Ark of the Covenant was. And when this guy went to leave the country, they told him that it was right after 9/11. They told him that he was not allowed to leave the country because he was flagged as a person of interest because he had been inside of an Al-Qaeda training camp. And this Al-Qaeda training camp was what they declared the area around the Palace of Sheba, where this archaeological dig was going on, to be. So this guy had to go to Vietnam and basically because it was a country that didn't have extradition. And so ever since, we've seen a lot of action around that area. That's why they always talk about the children being so heavily armed in Yemen, is because for thousands of years, the people of Yemen have been trained generationally to protect what's there. That's why you have kids running around, as they say, with yarn, 8-year-olds with yarn and Smurf stickers on their AK-47s. That's because that's just been generationally trained to those people. Now we're saying that's Al-Qaeda there. Now we've got, these looters in Egypt that just happen to have the keenest eye for antiquities. I love that. Same thing in Iraq. Baghdad Museum. These guys just happen to have just a pristine key eye for antiquities. Oh, just random looters know what ancient tablets and ancient things to go get. And then, of course, we have these 2 missing mummy heads that came up, and the fact that they were the heads and not any other parts, to me, just set off a red flag because of things that we know about various occult ceremonies and channelings that have been done by people as notorious as the Knights Templars, where they would use these severed heads that they called Baphomets, and they would channel entities and spirits and things and try to glean information from them. So my hypothesis on this is, I'm just throwing it out there because there was a history of this. I mean, for God's sakes, they have John the Baptist's head in Rome, right near the Vatican, with an ephod strapped around it. So none of this should be out of the realm of possibility. But I have a hypothesis that, this very well could be that they are trying to figure out some information on how to either control, contain, or activate some ancient technology that may very well be activating itself right now around the world. That could be why there's a military buildup in these places where there's methylitic structures. But all this stuff feels like a cover story. We know that we had been supporting the Egyptian president while secretly setting up this thing the whole time. That's already come out. All these protest leaders have been working for us. So we're starting to see the levels that there's always more levels to the story. And that's been kind of the frustration with me. And I know with you, Lee, with some of the more truth or patriot oriented shows out there, is it seems that they're just the research community is just still covering the base issues of things and not looking deeper into the subjects. And this has all the earmarks of the same thing that we've seen in other countries where antiquities ops have went down. And I think this is another case of that.
Well, it is very interesting that you don't really see a whole lot of discussion on these antiquities. And of course, we're seeing all of these protests and civil strife in these countries where you have these archaeological sites and antiquities that relate back to some of the earliest known civilizations in the post-flood era. So this right here, I think is very intriguing. And of course, I mean, the countries that we're looking at, we see Egypt, we see Yemen, we see Jordan, of course, Iraq before that. And of course, we occupy that country. We've got military bases that have been put on archaeological sites, the Baghdad Museum raid, as you mentioned. It's really very interesting to see how all of this is coming together. And, I mean, you're right. There are so many different layers to these stories. And I think this really fits in with what we've talked about before, is that these people don't do anything unless there's multiple reasons for them to do something. So I don't believe that all this civil unrest is a coincidence, especially in multiple different countries. So there's definitely a massive operation here at play. And we can look at the different reasons. We can look at the fact that they want disorder and chaos to shoot the price of oil up, to create more chaos, because if you have chaos, if you have civil strife, if you have these terrible things going on, then you can more easily change things, which is what they've done for centuries. And then on top of that, of course, the antiquities that you mentioned. All right, there's just so many different levels to this that it's hard to know really where this is all going to end. I mean, do you see more of this happening, like more civil strife in more of these different countries around the Middle East? How do you see Israel playing into this whole thing?
Well, I think this is all a fulfillment, as we talked about before, this fulfillment of this whatever prophecy of the priest class, where the people that have controlled and set up world religions are now using that same control through the banks and through the armies of the world and the people that they control, the chess pieces, to make this come into play. And I think what we're seeing and experiencing here with what's happening in the Middle East, yes, the first question, most definitely we're going to see more of this. I just saw a report earlier tonight that said that this was starting to pop off in other places. What other place did I read? It was starting to happen in.
I think there's some in Saudi Arabia, although it's not as crazy as in Yemen and Egypt.
Sudan, 99% of the people in Sudan just voted for secession. They're calling for independence. I mean, it's happening all over the place. And I think that, as you mentioned Saudi Arabia, I mean, and how that ties into Israel, I think that well, especially when we look at the fact that how the Saudi royals and the Saudi royal family and how their bloodline traces back to Jewish bloodlines. I mean, it's just plain and simple. It's an absolute fact. They're no more Jewish than they're no more Arab than you and I are. But these are the people that are running the OPEC country, and essentially what these Zionist priest class controllers are trying to do is they're essentially using the religion for the one angle to get the people in America and the people who, we got to go fight for the Christians and for Jesus. They get those people into it, by blowing stuff up and tanking the economy and everything else. They get them to go fight. And then they get them behind this idea of, wiping out Arabs and the rest of it. So then Israel and essentially the plan is they want Saudi Arabia to be the only Arab country in the entire Middle East. They want to wipe everybody else out. This is about Egypt becoming a proxy now, or maybe even, in fact, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Saudi empire. I mean, that's what I believe a lot of this is going on. And this ties right into the perfect timing for Israel, because you've already seen stuff that's coming out today. There were these, this story. Well, here it is right here. I'll just read it. "We will destroy Israel," Egyptian protester declares. Speaking to CNN Sunday, protesters in Egypt illustrated why the U.S. may not be in a hurry for President Hosni Mubarak to step down, because they're saying, we're going to go after Egypt now. We're going to spread this. And this is exactly what they want. They need all the Arab countries like Egypt and Jordan or any of the rest of the ones around there and Iran to be in a revolution, to be in chaos and disorder. Because again, as you mentioned right at the beginning of the show, this gives them the ability to come in the ensuing chaos and set up the new order. And that's what the whole operation is. That's what the whole name of the game is. They do this in little ways in everywhere that they operate. And they just use the local flavor and the local religion and the local mindset to pull the same operation off. It's catered towards whatever the region is. And we'll see one of these coming. It already is coming to our country, tailored and sort of custom fit for Americans. And I think that that's where the whole Tea Party thing comes in. I think that's where the whole Alex Jones and Patriot movement and that whole thing comes into that, and this instigating of a new civil war. I'm going to be talking about that in the new film, Secret Right Volume 2. And I mean, I really do, Lee. I really think that this is the part of them really finally conquering the Middle East for Zionist and Vatican interests.
Well, it's very interesting, and we do know that they are on a crusade. I mean, George W. Bush, he admitted it. No, we're on a crusade. And then you got Blackwater running around with what was it, vehicles with Templar 1 on them. I mean, it's a big joke.
Yeah, the Templar 2. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's up with that? I mean, they're telling you exactly what's going on. This is a 21st century version of the Crusades, and it's really no different than what happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I mean, the same organizations have their representatives involved in all this, and it's really a big joke. But I think what's really interesting about the Egypt protests and the civil uprising that you see over there is that I think we can look at what's going on over there, and hey, it's very possible, like you said, that something like that could happen here in the near future, especially if you see oil keep going through the roof, if you see all these crazy things happening on geopolitical perspective, the financial markets unraveling. I mean, all this stuff is very much a possibility that could happen in the next few years. So I think we can draw a lot of lessons from what's happening over in Egypt and be prepared for what may happen here, because clearly, I mean, the whole Tea Party movement, I mean, it's a bogus movement that's been created by the same people that are pushing ahead world government, and it's controlled opposition. That's all it is. And you see over in Egypt how they got these characters like what's that guy's name? El Bardari, this guy who's total New World Order. They got him coming in as this so-called opposition figure. And so you can see what they're doing over there, and you could certainly draw parallels to something that they would do here in the future.
Absolutely, and I think that in the exact same way that they are doing here, and you have a job here to sort of expose some of these characters and these different operatives. But the protesters in whatever country it is, if it's Egypt, if it's Iran, if it's the United States, whatever, it really doesn't matter. The protesters always are the people, generally the protesters themselves. They're just well-meaning people who indeed are tired of the way things are, but it's the people who instigate and the people who provocateur these actions and these street actions and all this stuff in the first place. They always do this. It's the same thing they do in the intelligence communities with Al-Qaeda. They put these phony leaders out there talking about jihad, and then they go and rope some well-meaning dupes in, and they rope them in, and they give them their marching orders, and then the well-meaning dupes are sent out, and they are the ones that are, quickly disposed of by the United States military. Well, they do that microcosmically as well in the whole protest. They get these things provocateur, they get uprisings, you get the people yelling and screaming, they put them on TV, and then regular plain Jane people see that and become inspired by it, and they go become a part of the protest or whatever, and oftentimes they're mowed down or tear gassed or shot or killed or taken away or beat down, whatever. All manner of violence you can imagine. And that's exactly what they want. And then that's used and shown in the media, and that's used to enrage more people. And it's just sick and disgusting to watch it happen. And I can see right now very clearly, and I know you can too, that there are going to be certain individuals that we could probably sit here and name right now, but we won't, but that will be those type of characters and that'll be shown on TV. And those will be ones that'll be shown on Fox News here. They'll be the ones in the streets, the people like Alex Jones and others. Those will be the ones that'll be out there, that they'll show on TV leading the revolution. That'll inspire other people. And then a bunch of other people will go up there and get killed, and we'll end up with a bigger mess on our hands. I mean, all this stuff really, in the end, is really boils down to getting an effect out of us. They really, really want us to react. So when we react to it, they can justify their actions against us with what we do. That's really what it is. They're trying to get all of us to react in some way. And you start to find that this does anymore start to affect all of us. 2, 3, 4 years ago, or when you and I first started on air, before the economic collapse and stuff hit, Lee, you had a lot more people back then that, would look at information like ours and stuff, what we talk about as, an option. And most people don't look at being informed about this stuff anymore as an option. A lot of people I meet now, they're a lot more wanting to know what's going on because it's starting to affect everybody. And so that's a good sign that this operation is pushing forward in just the way they want it to, because now you're starting to see it affect everyone. And as I've talked about extensively on my show, this coincided with the fact that they've now, reduced the amount of fluoride going into the water. Basically just pulling a large SSRI type substance in fluoride out from underneath people in a large dose. What happens when people get off their meds. and don't get their SSRIs, which are largely made of fluoride, well, they start to go a little crazy, and it doesn't keep them as docile as it did before, and they're not as willing to hold back from punching somebody in the mouth for flipping them off when they go down the road or something as they used to be. Little things like that are how these things are going to start. And when you've got fearmongers and people who over-exaggerate everything and try to get a response out of people yelling and screaming, it's very easy to buy into that, and it's very easy to buy into the fact that you're involving yourself in a real, actual revolution when you're not. So this is one of the most important things that I think everybody out there, whether they agree with Lee Rogers or Josh Reeves any other time, I think the one thing that each and every one of you out there needs to be very wary of is if you are involving yourself in an action that is going to be violence or revolution or whatever it is, make sure that you are participating in that on your terms and because you think it's the right thing to do, not because some alleged leader or somebody like that was charismatic and got you convinced that is what you need to do. This is going to be a very important decision because a lot of people are going to make that decision, I think, hastily, Lee, and think it's time to jump and run whenever Big Daddy Leader or whoever it is says it's revolution time and it's time to lock and load. I think a lot of people are going to jump into that and not really think about it because they're going to be acting on their emotions, and that's exactly what these patriot fearmongers and truth people want to do. They want to get you acting on your lower emotions so that you're not thinking rationally and you're not thinking about the situation and how do you get out of it and survive. You're just acting on that strictly low-level, low-vibratory, emotional type of response where it's pure animal instinct. You're just raw, whose butt do I got to kick? Who do I go after? You're operating on that, and you're not going to operate rationally. And that's what all this stuff boils down to, is they want us to be thinking with our emotions and not with our rational mind, so that we'll make bad decisions when the time comes, if we, heaven forbid, if we have to defend ourselves.
Well, sure. And it's important to note that these people have had a long time to perfect the steering of revolutions and opposition movements. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. And you can look at the Illuminati's involvement in the French Revolution, the American Revolution. You can look at the Jesuits' involvement in political subversion. In fact, it's kind of interesting when you look at the fact that the anti-communist movement in this country was actually started by Joseph McCarthy and somebody by the name of Edmund Walsh, both of whom had ties back to the Jesuits and Jesuit-based institutions. And we know that the Jesuits have, of course, not only been involved with that, but also they were involved in fomenting Marxist revolutions. So they like to steer both sides of the equation to create chaos so they can foment their order. And I think what's happening now is very dangerous, because if you have all these revolutions and you have all this civil strife going on, they can more easily shape and change these regions of the world to how they want it, not how the people want it, but how they want it. And I think it's very dangerous. But Josh, real quick, I just want to wrap up this whole discussion on Egypt and these protests. They're planning this 1 million man march tomorrow. Now, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts as to what's going to happen with this 1 million man march? Apparently, they're going to be marching on the presidential palace, which, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but it sounds like tomorrow is going to be a very pivotal day for this revolution, for these protesters as they march on the palace. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's February 1st, 2011, so it's 2/1/11. So that's you've got a very significance there with it being the first of the month. It's a Tuesday as well, another day they like to do things. We've got the National Guard now being sent in, the United States National Guard being sent into Egypt. They're talking about they're going to start moving civilians and moving people out completely tomorrow. Our military is. So, there's a very distinct chance here that we may see some violence pop off. They've already said, there was some article earlier today I saw that, they said they're going to go easy on the protesters, or Egypt's military vows not to harm protesters. And, as well as I do, Lee, these guys always do the opposite of whatever they say they're going to do. So I trust that about as much as I trust Obama saying that, he's going to fix the economy or something. But this stuff is it's very daunting, because whatever happens here is going to be seen as as you mentioned before, you put it very perfectly right before you went to me a second ago about all of these things being used kind of as a model to what's going to happen in other countries. I mean, I think that's 100% what they're doing. They're gonna try and get everybody in every place in the world, as you said, so razzled and out of control that that there isn't any order, and then they come in and set a new order. I mean, look what they did in Haiti, for God's sake. I mean, that earthquake hit smack dab in the middle of their government, knocked out all the government completely. And now people are able to go down there and mine and drill for oil and do whatever else. Corporations down there having a field day unregulated. That's what they want to do all over. I've talked about the disaster economy many times. I think that's definitely another one of the big things that you're going to start seeing. I think more of the events that we're going to start seeing around the world are going to be weather-based, are going to be these kind of things with like earthquakes and engineered storms and the rest of it. Because, when you have this mythology that and I'm not ever one of those people that's ever going to say that there isn't something to 2012. I mean, certainly galactic alignment, the precession of the equinoxes are provable things. It's provable there's been pole shifts on this planet before. But, past that, I'm not one of these people that gets into that. But I see where this 2012 thing does give them the perfect mythology to essentially, cause earthquakes, cause floods, cause volcanoes, whatever else. And then all I have to say is they just tell the regular mainstream society that this is global warming. So give us more money and help us, leave less of a carbon footprint so this won't happen. And then the conspiracy theorists say, no, they're wrong. It's not global warming. Global warming is a fraud. It's 2012. It's 2012. Nibiru's on its way. And that's why it's happening. And then people buy into that. You see, but the fact of the matter is that even the 2012 thing is a perfect mythology and a perfect cover for them to wipe out large sections of the population, to, as you said, cause this chaos so they can come in and set new order. They can come in and essentially, as I've talked about before, the disaster economy, they blow things up only to put them back together again because, of course, they own all of the companies. They can get no-bid contracts with Halliburton. They own all the companies that come in and do all of the rebuilding. So I think that, yeah, absolutely. This stuff you're going to see is going to spread, and I think that it is going to be what is the really the thing that pops off what happens here in America. People are already saying it. If you monitor the Patriot websites and stuff, they're saying, today Egypt, tomorrow the world, or today Egypt and tomorrow the United States, So people are hinting at it, but we're just going to have to see. I think it's going to be one of those things where one thing, as we've talked about many times, Lee, some kid in a 9/11 truther shirt getting, beat up by a cop or killed by a cop or something like that could spark it. It's who knows at this point, but I think it's definitely a fever pitch right now towards something big happening in the realm and scope of outbreak and civil war in this country.
Sure. Well, what's interesting is that just a month ago we were talking about this very subject, saying that we're going to see more civil strife, that we're going to see more protests, that we're going to see more disorder, and I was just surprised that happened so soon. I mean, here we are in the first month of 2011, and we're just seeing widespread chaos and all of this craziness going on over the Middle East, and of all places, Egypt, which really hasn't been the subject of a whole lot of focus by anybody over the past several years because it's largely been a place that's been very stable. They've had a peace agreement with Israel, but if there's any place in which you want to create chaos, Egypt is certainly a good place to do it because the Suez Canal is, of course, a major trading route, and any disruption to the Suez Canal with the shipment of goods and services through there would just be detrimental to the global economy. So it's very important what happens in Egypt and, of course, in the rest of the Middle East for the price of oil, for global trade as a whole. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on. But, Josh, I want to change subjects because we could probably talk about that all day. But, I mean, I think our people have covered that more extensively, and there's not really a whole lot of need to really get into it too in-depthly. I mean, this is going to be something we're going to be talking about for a little while anyway. But I want to shift gears and get into some other topics of conversation, especially some things that have kind of gone on the radar because of what's happening over the Middle East. Over in Utah, we had this interesting base closing, and I found it kind of strange because they said that there was nothing to this base closing. They literally shut down the base in which anybody inside the base couldn't come out and anybody outside the base couldn't come in. And this is a place where they do all sorts of biological weapons testing and things like that. I was just wondering if you came across any information on this. I know you told me off air, but just for the benefit of the audience, What do you think of that whole situation there? And do you think there's more to it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, I want to start off by saying I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what this is, but I had somebody come into my chat room the other day. I was telling you about this before the show, and somebody came in my chat room the other night, and they're making all sorts of threatening statements against me. And you see that sometimes, but not in this way, not in the way where it's actual, like, you're gonna get shot down, we're gonna shoot you, we're gonna kill you. Normally they don't say this kind of things because, of course, it is illegal to make threats against someone's life on the internet. And the people are sitting there getting screenshots and everything else. But this person said that there was I was effing with something that I didn't know. I had no idea who I was effing with, and that this was essentially about a piece of information that I'd come across recently and started talking about recently on the show. And then if I quit talking about this one piece of information, well, they wouldn't have to do anything to me if I quit talking about it. But the person would never say what that piece of information was. They would never. So
well, yeah, that figures. Yeah, it's
very hard for me to take something that like that seriously 100% if you're not going to sit there and tell me what it is that you don't want me talking about. I mean, I offered to put my email address, and I did put my email address out there, which is globalrealityshow@gmail.com, for this person to email me and tell me what it is they don't want me to talk about on air. But I thought it was interesting because their IP address from the chat room came from Ogden, Utah, which was right. And I started thinking, well, why does that ring a bell? Well, number one, that's Glenn Beck territory. That's where he came from, which is interesting. And so I thought at first maybe it was something to do with the CMP or something. And then I remembered that I'd covered that story about from right there around Ogden, Utah, where, as you mentioned, this base closing last week where they had a lockdown, where they had some missing VX nerve gas. Now, just last month, just the beginning of last month, when we started to have all these dead birds appear around the country, there were some reports that had come out about this gentleman who had wound up dead in the landfill in New Jersey. We talked about that last time I was on the show with you, Lee.
Yeah, John Jack Parsons Wheeler.
Jack Parsons Wheeler.
Yeah, interesting name, huh?
Great name. No connection there. But so we talked about that. And there was some reports that had come out that he was essentially getting ready to blow the whistle on the fact that there was all this VX nerve gas that we had allegedly confiscated, I'm going to say, from Saddam Hussein and his empire after toppling the empire there in 2003. And they brought it back to the United States to study it when they were supposed to destroy it and get rid of it, and that Russia was up in arms about this, and Russia was very upset that we hadn't disposed of this. And the next thing you know, we have this missing VX gas right after that, which allegedly this Jack Parsons Wheeler was getting ready to blow the whistle on, and there were some other people that came out, or some speculation rather, that was going around that they had been pumping this stuff into the ground somewhere around the area of the New Madrid fault line, and that they were going to try and engineer an earthquake with this stuff to get rid of it. And this is why the birds were dying and all the rest of stuff. Again, a lot of this is speculation. I don't know for sure if this is absolutely positively true. I'm just reporting to you what I've read, and we put it out to the court of public opinion.
The bird stuff, it seems like the bird die-offs have been happening all around the world, along with fish die-offs. So it seems like it's more of a global phenomenon.
Right, exactly. So we have that, and then we have this missing VX gas from that allegedly they said they found, or something else. But it was a big deal. They locked down and had this whole containment facility locked down, and also they had a lockdown in Fort Bragg last week as well. I don't know if you heard about that one, Lee.
No, actually, I didn't. Fort Bragg. So what was the excuse for that shutdown?
I didn't. I didn't find a lot on it, but there was a report that came out that just said that Fort Bragg was in a lockdown, and I didn't find a lot of information as to what specifics on it. But you can type it down, Fort Bragg lockdown, and see what you come up with, and you might be able to find some articles on it. But I had just mentioned on my show, what are they doing studying this stuff if they are supposed to be destroying it? The only reason to be studying this VX gas would be if they were planning on using it. Now, I live, of course, in the Dallas area here, and it's all abuzz because we're having the Super Bowl here, and we've had all kinds of craziness going down in my town. I mean, I can't tell you, Lee, over the past 2 weeks, the insane weird aircraft that I've seen in the sky over Dallas. They're talking about, remote control pilotless helicopters. Arlington, which is about 20 minutes or 25 minutes away from where I live, is where the stadium is. has now gotten a grant from Homeland Security, and they're flying these drone helicopters around, all this Department of Homeland Security tech, and nobody in my town at all, besides me, is asking the question here, where is this stuff going to go after the Super Bowl's over? Is it all just going to leave and go away? No. All of this surveillance stuff they're bringing in is going to stay here well after the Super Bowl's gone on its way, and well after everybody's gone home and somebody's been declared champion. And so I started seeing all these things. We had last week, or on Friday, we had a what they call it was a bomb scare in downtown Dallas and uptown in Pegasus Plaza, and they evacuated everybody out. And then they came back later and said it was a false alarm. Something seemed odd about that to me. We've had FEMA was doing drills in downtown Dallas, and that's the whole thing that people from Dallas don't understand is that they say the Super Bowl's in Dallas. Well, technically, it's not in Dallas. It's in Arlington, which is about it's a suburb, and it's about 15 miles away from Dallas. But they were doing all these FEMA drills and stuff for terrorist attacks in downtown Dallas, well, 15, 20 miles away from where the stadium is at. And
so nothing to do with Super Bowl security. It's just a big show.
Right, exactly. That's the whole thing, Lee, is that, none of this stuff had anything to do with anything keeping safe. It had to do with terrorist attacks going in and around Dallas around the Super Bowl. So I'd speculated on my show, well, is it possible that the reason that they're using this VX gas is because they're planning on doing something like that at the Super Bowl? And then I started remembering that old movie from the 70s.
Yeah, Black Sunday. Yes.
I used to watch it with my uncle. Yeah, Black Sunday,
yes.
which is if nobody's ever seen this movie, it's about this Vietnam vet who's like disgruntled, and like I think the Mossad is in this, and it's like an Israeli tie-in. And basically these terrorists hijacked the blimp to fly it into the stadium during the Super Bowl. And what I thought was interesting, Lee, in going back and looking at that and reviewing that, is that the two teams that were in the Super Bowl in that movie, do you remember who it was?
I don't recall. I've only seen bits and pieces of the film. It's definitely a movie I have to watch again with a new set of eyes.
Well, the teams that were playing in the Super Bowl was the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, isn't that interesting that the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing in the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl is they keep going out of their way to say that the Super Bowl is in Dallas, when actually the stadium's actually in Arlington technically. And even the mayor of Arlington's come out and said, hey, you need to start telling people it's in Arlington, not in Dallas. But yeah, they keep saying Super Bowl in Dallas, and in Pittsburgh being one of the teams. So I don't know. Again, I'm just speculating. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Maybe this was the info that person was so upset with me talking about. I don't know. But either way, it's just one of those things that we need to be paying attention to, and always looking at all the angles and all the possibilities. That's how we're going to be. That's how we're going to save ourselves. If we only know one angle, then we're only going to be operating on one point of view. We need to be looking at all the possibilities, because these guys will do anything to get their agenda continuedly.
Oh, there's no question. And it's certainly something to pay attention to, because, man, that's just weird. With all the Homeland Security technology that they have deployed there, this stuff in Utah with this base closing, very, very suspicious. So, of course, whenever they release a story about something saying that, we closed the base for X, Y, and Z reasons, 99 times out of 100, it's a complete lie. Or if it's not a complete lie, it's a partial lie. So we don't know exactly what happened there, but clearly, I think the Super Bowl is certainly something that we should keep an eye on, just in case they decide to pull off some crazy operation. But again, we don't know what these people are going to do. I mean, there's just so much going on. There's so many different things happening. It's very difficult to keep track of it all. But
back in 2009, we had a provocateur situation here. It's actually with the largest building in downtown Dallas. Is this big? We always call it the Green Giants. This big green neon building, and the FBI had provocateured this guy into blowing it up, and they told him they were giving him timers and bombers and all this stuff, and when he went to activate, they said gotcha. And it just seemed interesting to me that, the FBI was trying to catch would-be terrorists as far back as 2009 for blowing up buildings in Dallas. And that's something they've been hinting at more and more and more. And so I don't know. Like I said, it's like you said as well, it's good to look at all the cases just so we know what all the evidence is beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Yeah, there's just so much going on. And this is certainly something that hasn't really gotten a whole lot of attention with everything going on in Egypt and the Middle East. That seems to be the main focus that the corporate media has had, at least covering all of that. And a lot of these other stories, like the John Wheeler murder, that's gotten almost no coverage since this whole thing in Egypt has dominated the headlines. The same thing with this base closing. Josh, is there anything else that you think has kind of been left under the radar because of all the stuff happening with Egypt. Then, of course, before that, we had like about a week or two of coverage of the Gabby Gifford shooting. And it's kind of funny how that's just fallen completely off the radar. Now it's hardly even being talked about with Egypt being in the news so prominently. But is there anything else that you think is worthy of attention that we haven't talked about?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff, Lee. There's the continuation of what's happening with, as you talk about a lot with the monetary system and what's happening there. And that's a big part of the collapse. I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me that, but they're really trying to steer what people are concerned with, and get people looking at this. I mean, it was like, before that, it was the big WikiLeaks thing. And, boy, I came out with that stuff about Julian Assange and, the connection to the White Brotherhood and stuff. And it's amazing. It seems like almost to the point of right after I came out with that, we've had a lot of this WikiLeaks stuff. I mean, they've really gotten quiet on it. And one of the bigger things that I really think is probably the biggest story that has come out that affects my work and your work, to me, that maybe has been swept under the rug over the past week was a week ago Friday when this report came out about Seymour Hersh saying that he's going to be writing a book about, these neocons that are in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta and in the Opus Dei and secretive Vatican orders. And I mean, they're really trying to hijack the perimeters of these type of discussions so that when Josh Reeves or Lee Rogers comes to the table about a piece of information about the John Birch Society or the Jesuits or whatever have you, they just say, oh, well, that wasn't in Seymour Hersh's book, and so it must not be true. And I hope that doesn't get swept under the rug. I hope people still remain pissed off and mad about that, because you should. They're trying to take the hard work of people like you and I that we've done for years now and just dust it off as unimportant. And even though those of us have been screaming at this for years, being called conspiracy theorists, all of a sudden Seymour Hersh comes out with it. So it's fact. And anything that falls out of what Seymour Hersh says is going to be considered disinfo or anything else. And I'm still mad about that. And I just want to make sure that we continue to not let ourselves get too distracted by the news. It's very difficult because those of us that do radio shows that do shows that revolve around the news for a good portion of the shows are sometimes at the mercy of the news cycles. And I have done my best to try and willfully not allow that to happen, because if we're not careful, even though those of us out here who consider ourselves a part of the alternative media or not the mainstream media or underground media, we're still human. And we are still very, very susceptible to having ourselves become, hijacked subsequently by this mainstream news. What I mean is, whatever is the hot topic, whatever is the news cycle, we're still going to be talking about it on our show. Now, we may give it the conspiracy slant, we may give it the New World Order slant, the anti-Illuminati slant, whatever have you. But the fact of the matter is, we are still talking about topics and conversations that they are trying to get us to have. So it's very important that those of us who put ourselves out here as, personalities in this type of work, it's very important that we make sure that we don't allow ourselves to be pulled along too much and be thinking about what they want us to be thinking about. I'm always one of those people that if they're trying to get us to everybody on every, talk radio show to talk about one specific topic, maybe then we need to go be looking at some other things and getting into those instead. Because we don't want to allow ourselves to become tools of the mainstream media, just giving a different slant on what they're talking about as well. I think that's dangerous.
I totally agree. And I think the Gabby Gifford shooting was a perfect example, because this story, I mean, I was over in Europe when a lot of this stuff was still going on. That was not even talked about over there. It was even a little blurb that they mentioned. Their focus was on the Tunisia uprising. But over in the United States, it was just nonstop coverage of Gabby Giffords, the shooting, that crazed Jared Lee Lawner character, which has spawned all sorts of discussion in the conspiracy community about, well, was he MK Ultra? Was he under mind control? I mean, I don't think we'll ever know the answers to those questions. It's like the JFK assassination or 9/11. Even was almost 10 years after 9/11, and we can still have debates about all the different facets of that particular instant. The same thing with the JFK assassination. And how long has that been? I mean, we're coming up on what? Almost 50 years now? It's hard to believe, but it's almost 50 years after the JFK assassination, and still people can't agree on what exactly happened there. So I think it's very clear that the media and the alternative media, or the conspiracy community, whatever you want to call this whole type of thing that we're involved in, it's clear that there are talking points in the corporate media for left versus right and so forth and so on. And then you have talking points for different communities within the realm and scope of the alternative media. And so it's hard not to fall into these traps. But I think you're right. I think what we have to do is that if we see the media focusing in on something, yeah, we should maybe mention it briefly and just give our quick take on it. But look at what the corporate media and the mainstream, the alternative media is not talking about, and talk about those issues more.
Well, undoubtedly, Lee, I think I think that. Sorry, my mic muted there for a second. I was choking it. Give me just 1 second.
Oh, that's okay. Take your time.
Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, I think that that's exactly what's going on. Is that we become, we just become a parrots of this same information, and we're all constantly focused on it. I think they want you and I to be focused on what's happening in Egypt or wherever have you, where these revolutions are going on, so that hopefully, best case scenario, we'll get on our shows, as probably a lot of people already have at this point, and relate that to the coming revolution in America, the coming revolution in whatever country, so that we then try to inspire people. And I think this is where the Patriot movement has succeeded in spades, because they've gotten people to do just exactly that. They've gotten people to go on these shows and talk to what has always been considered the fringe underground type of people, and talk to them in this new way about freedom, and talk to them in this new way about, revolution and all the rest of this. And so, they don't even realize that what they're talking about is something that's coming from an operation, something that is trying to have that desired effect and to get people involved in things so that they have an excuse to basically get their operation across. It's amazing to me the correlations between what was happening in this country prior to the first American Civil War and the things that are going on in it now, and how the same people are at play. The people that were, that wanted slavery and that were working on behalf of the Vatican and the Rothschild bankers and the rest of it, Albert Pike and the whole crew who assassinated Lincoln, all these guys were all parts of members of secret societies, just as these people who are involved in the right wing of politics who are playing those same roles today are. I mean, there was very much, the CMP is just like the modern day version of what the guys in the Knights of the Secret Circle, like Pike and Wilkes Booth and the rest of these guys were doing. It's amazing. One of the one of the founding members of the International Association for the Advancement of Ethnology and Eugenics in Edinburgh, Scotland, was the descendant of the farm where John Wilkes Booth hid out at after he assassinated Kennedy. And of course, it's also been well documented that Albert Pike fled to Canada.
You mean Lincoln?
Yeah, Lincoln. I'm sorry, Lincoln, rather. But after the assassination of Lincoln, Albert Pike went to Canada and actually was hiding out there with a Jesuit priest. So when you put those connections with these same people and you see the coincidence of, well, my goodness, there's Albert Pike and his connection to Jesuit priests and the rest of it. There, of course, is Alex Jones and his connection to the John Birch Society, the Jesuit order, and the Sheen family, and on and on and on. And there's him, instigating this new conflict and new revolution in America. I mean, these things are not coincidences. And we're going to be detailing that quite a bit in the new film, Lee.
Yeah, well, speaking of Alex Jones, I want to get into this because, of course, I'm sure you're aware. In fact, I know you're aware. But again, just for the benefit of the audience, he's got this V for Victory campaign that he is promoting heavily. And there's even this article on one of his websites. I forget if it's the prison site or the InfoWars site, but basically they're trying to equate these Egyptians holding up two fingers as being in solidarity with their V for Victory campaign, which is a joke in of itself. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. But also, I'd like to get your thoughts on how the V symbol and I know you've talked about this in your show, so I'd like you to give your take on this to the audience. But the V symbol, I mean, this is a symbol that's been associated with V for Vendetta, which is a movie that was really crafted and inspired by the works of an occultist, the same guy that was responsible for the Watchmen movie, which is all sorts of Illuminati symbolism. The V symbol, of course, is all sorts of esoteric and occult meanings. I'd like to get your take on this whole V for Victory campaign and some of the shenanigans that are going along with it.
It's interesting. They always seem to have one of these right around the first of the year. Every year, one of these Alex Jones type of publicity stunts, and they always seem to be followed. And we'll see what's next. I've got my money on who was that? Who was the one guy that was fear mongering all the swine flu stuff with Jones, Lee?
Yeah, Steve Quill. You're talking about like another Patriot media blow up. I mean, he's had like one each year. He had Statmiller, he had Rents, he had the We the People radio network thing.
Yep.
And then what was the last one? Oh yeah, Mike Rivero. So there's been like on average
Jack Blood as well. Yeah, Jack Blood.
Oh yeah, Jack Blood. Yeah, Jack Blood. Well, that was kind of tied in with the whole We the People radio network thing. So it was kind of like 2 in 1. But it's just insane. So yeah, Steve Quayle, I think is the guy you're referring to.
Absolutely. I got my money on him next for Jeff Rents too. Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that one, but yeah, there's been all those. Every year there seems to be one right after he pulls his publicity stunt. So we'll see. I think Steve Quayle will probably be the next one that'll be a big blow up. But that's all a part of the operation. That's all to get everybody thinking that there's all this infighting and stuff going on, and that's one of the ineffective things that they try to say about you and I is that we're infighting, or we're not infighting, because if you look up the definition of infighting. And most of these people don't even know what the definitions of these words they throw around mean. They don't know what COINTEL means or COINTELPRO means, even though that was an operation of the 1960s. They don't know what any of these things mean. In order to have infighting, you have to be involved in a group or in a relationship with someone. We're not in a group or a relationship with anybody that we're exposing. So it's not infight. So see, when people say that, all that does, it's a trigger word where it's an attempt to lay a negative energy or a negative keyword upon you and upon your name, so that people, when they see your name, their psychic imprint or their mental imprint goes back to that first initial thing where somebody said something negative about you, because that's inherently what we focus in on. You can say somebody is the greatest person in the world, and they have all these awards and they've done all this great stuff. But they may have ran over a kitten in 1985, and immediately that's what the brain is going to go on. It's not going to be all the accolades if they're going to, he killed that poor cat. Oh my goodness. That's what people are going to zone in on. So that's what that's what these people do when they try to associate you and I with being, somehow infighting when we're bringing up this information. I think what's very interesting is that, immediately when this came out, I started to see all of the baiting. It's really trying to bait people into this idea of the revolution. As you mentioned, V, I've gone over all the voluminous facts about this, about the occult references. You mentioned Alan Moore, of course, who's a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis, and in his connection to that. And going back to what we talked about earlier with the Jesuits, and that's what I'm finding more, and that's what's going in the Secret Right too, is I'm finding more and more connections to the Council for National Policy directly back to the foundations of the creation of the Illuminati on into the modern day Illuminists that are going around now. So this is very daunting for me. I think that this is a big psychological operation, and I think that the real question is who has 10 grand to give somebody who is to go and hang up posters or have the best action or something of that nature. I mean, revolutions need money. And revolutions are generally always funded by shady sources or sources that trace back to, special interests or governments or anything else. I think there's a lot of money being sloshed around right now in a provocatory revolution in the United States, just as it was in Egypt and other places. And, you got to ask yourself, 10 grand to go hang up some posters in this economy? I don't know, man. I think it just has that distinct odor and aroma of the interesting palette of an operation, because that's what it is. It's an op.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pretty much what you have here with the Jones operation and, of course, the entire Patriot movement, as we found out over the years, is that it's really just part and parcel of the New World Order system that they're trying to form and create. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, when you take a look at some of these characters that have financed the Council for National Policy, you take a look at the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. I mean, we have a news clip from the 1970s in which they talk about the Fraser Committee. This is a mainstream news clip, and the newscaster says specifically, the Fraser Committee has determined that the Reverend Sun Myung Moon and his Unification Church, their ultimate goal is to set up basically a theocratic one-world government system. That's not me saying this. This is the Fraser Committee. Now, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon and the Unification Church were financial backers of the Council for National Policy. They were friends with Tim LaHaye, who founded the Council for National Policy. So you have someone like that. Then you have all these members of the Council for National Policy that are also Council on Foreign Relations members, people like J. Peter Grace, Edward Teller. And then you take a look at Phyllis Schlafly, people like her. She wrote a book with Chester Ward, actually a few books. It was more than one. And Chester Ward was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations for well over a decade. And these are just some of the different links that we have. And the Council on Foreign Relations, I don't need to remind anybody this, but the Council on Foreign Relations is an institution that has historically, since its inception, been tied in with people who have wanted to create a system of one world totalitarian government. So all this stuff ties in with each other. And I think it's very telling that the Council for National Policy and these secretive, I don't know if you want to call it this, but these right-wing groups, I mean, they're just as New World Order as anybody else. And these people in the Patriot movement like Jones and the guests that he has on this show have all these links back to this group, and it's highly, highly suspect. So if you want to look at who's financing Jones, you have to look at the New World Order and the people who are trying to push it ahead.
It's Fabian socialism, 100%. That was what the formation of the Council for National Policy in 1981 was all about, was being able to bring in socialism whole cloth into the United States of America so they could ensure that after that point, no matter who you voted for on either side of the political spectrum, you were going to get socialism. And that indeed has happened. I mean, there was an article that came out a week or so ago, and it was this, you've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this lately, Lee, but lately all of a sudden, I've heard this on some of those clips from Jones' show. I've heard all these various different clips going around the Truth Movement, Patriot Movement now. It seems that all of a sudden the right wing is sort of taking a step back from Reagan all of a sudden. Have you noticed that?
Well, it's interesting because Obama is actually, if you see some of these
news
reports,
saying, yeah,
Obama has been referencing Reagan, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, there's this Time magazine article, The Role Model, What Obama Sees in Reagan.
Yes.
And I noticed that you've heard, I think it was, I forget who it was, Bob Chapman or one of those guys was on.
Oh, God, yeah, I covered that on the show. I played the clip.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain it to the audience.
No, you go ahead. I mean, yeah, it's just the whole gay sex thing and all that.
Yeah, Reagan being a homosexual. And that was right after him and Iserby were talking about the Council for National Policy. And although I have questions about Iserby, I'm not sure. I don't think she's a friend of ours.
Sure.
But she brought up legitimate information about the Council for National Policy. A lot of it was correct according to my research.
Yes.
And of course your research. And then Bob Chapman drops his bombshell saying that, I saw a film with Ronald Reagan getting raped in the ass with some strap-on device. Well, he didn't say that, but that's kind of what he implied. I mean, where does that come from? Where the hell does that come from, man?
I'm telling you, man, there's something going on with this because I've been seeing this lately. The right wing in general is starting to take a big step away from Reagan. It started with, I guess, his adopted son or whoever it was that was saying, he may have had Alzheimer's while he was in office and all this stuff. And then you started seeing all these patriots and they're taking a step away from Reagan and sort of disassociating themselves with it. And this happened at the same time when Jones had Iserby on, as you mentioned, and then he had Schlafly on. You see, it's almost as if now they're trying to distance themselves. And what's interesting is that, and even Paul Craig Roberts admitted this. There was one of the old Intel strike reports on with Doug Owen and Michael Vale one time that I called into, and they had Paul Craig Roberts on, and we, of course, firebombed Paul Craig Roberts, and I called in and asked him about a prune face about the CMP. And he went through all these explanations, and even after I hung up 20 minutes later on the show, he's going back and bringing stuff up again. And he gave all these reasons for what the CMP was. And then the last reason he said, well, okay, I was a member, but I remember that all it was it was a support group for Reagan. And I was just like, a support group for Reagan. I mean, I've never even heard anybody even say remotely that's what it was. But the point of the matter is, if that, according to Paul Craig Roberts, back in 2008 was indeed what the group was. And, then the CMP, when they came in, they were full of Reagan cabinet members. It was brought in right as CMP was brought in right as Reagan was brought in. You had all the right players in there, tons of CMP players in the Reagan White House. You even another interesting thing in some of the footage from Alex Jones' Bohemian Grove thing. There's a clip where he walks by these two gentlemen, and one of the gentlemen says, "Reagan was a turning point for us." And that's a really interesting statement because when you look at the fact that all of these groups, CMP, CFR, Royal Institute of International Affairs, all these groups at their core, when you dig back and you go back and you go back, were all founded by people that had come out of things like the London School of Economics, all these, the Cliveden set. It goes back to British socialism and the idea of spreading that throughout the world. And that's exactly what they've done and exactly what is going to happen. I mean, communism and socialism is as big and is powerful as it ever has been. But your average person runs around thinking we defeated communism, we defeated the Cold War. No. No. That was the public show that they put on so they could kill a bunch of people. This agenda has continued. It's just changed names and changed faces. And Mao and Lenin and Stalin and Hitler are alive and well today in the world. They just have new names and new faces, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting. And, this is kind of an interesting tidbit, but I overheard Jones say that it's illegal and unethical, essentially, to finance revolutions from private sources. And, well, he had Phyllis Schlafly on his show, and Phyllis Schlafly, she was responsible through the Eagle Forum providing the Contras with these freedom fighter friendship kits as a private organization. Funny how he didn't bring that up to her.
No, he wouldn't bring that up because, of course, that would have to put him in a position where he'd have to, say he saw that clip in my film or something. He wouldn't dare admit to that. But no, you're exactly right, and that is in the Secret Volume 1. That clip is in there where freedom fighter friendship packs. And we're just going to let them know that we appreciate them so much for going down and killing all the people that wouldn't take Christianity from our Bibles that we printed, and now we're going to take your religion, we're going to take your land, we're going to take your drugs, and we're going to take over. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an extremely bizarre clip. You can see in Josh's film, just unbelievable stuff there. I mean, when I first saw that clip, I couldn't believe it was real because it was so unbelievably strange. But that's what happened. That's true history. A lot of these Council for National Policy types were heavily involved in the Iran-Contra affair, which, of course, was big news towards the end of Reagan's second term. But, Josh, we've been doing this for about an hour or so. I'm going to play some music and take a quick break. And then on the other side of the break, I'd like to get into Phyllis Schlafly and some more of the stuff that transpired with the couple of interviews that she did with Jones, because very interesting stuff. And I think it's really telling as to what's going on with the Patriot movement and these characters and how they're tied into the whole priest class system. So, folks, we will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm joined here with my guest, Josh Reeves. You can check out his website at theglobalreality.com. You can check out his films, his radio show, all his work right up there on that website. Again, that's theglobalreality.com. And also, I just wanted to throw this out there to the audience. If you have any questions, and this seemed to work pretty well last time we had Josh on, so what we're going to do is, if you have any questions, we're going to field email questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to email this address, lrogers, LROGERS, at oraclebroadcasting.com. And that email address should be up on oraclebroadcasting.com in the host section. I know it's up there somewhere. But again, lrogers, LROGERS, at oraclebroadcasting.com. Shoot me an email, and if you have a question, we're going to try to field those questions in the third hour sometime. So that's how we're going to do it. And last time we got we got a ton of questions. Really took us in some very interesting directions. So we'd like to do that again since it was so successful last time. But Josh, going back to what I was talking about before we went to break, Phyllis Schlafly, of course, she was on the Alex Jones show for a couple of interviews, and very bizarre interviews each time. And I think this is definitely showing that the information about the Council for National Policy, the Knights of Malta. These are organizations that have largely been ignored, or they've been the subject of gatekeepers within the realm of the Patriot community. It seems as if they have to talk about this stuff now because there are more and more people aware of what these organizations are, and it's obviously putting them in very uncomfortable positions. Now, I'm just curious, did you hear the entire Schlafly interview when Jones questioned her about the Council for National Policy? Because it was a very bizarre interview. Because towards the end of the interview, Jones actually apologized to her for putting her through that line of questioning. A very, very strange interview. And I was wondering if you could give the audience your thoughts on the whole Phyllis Schlafly Jones interview and some of the goings on with them being forced to talk about the CNP more so than I think they're comfortable with.
Well, I think that this wouldn't have seemed out of place. Really, Lee he had a history of having Phyllis Schlafly on his program, which up to this time he did not. Now, I know that they used to play her show in the evening times on GCN, which really is no surprise when you look at everything we know about GCN, which we'll be covering in the new movie as well with Donna Khashoggi and the rest of those connections. But it was a very interesting interview because, again, why out of the blue, just within a week or 2 weeks after having on Iserby a couple of times to discuss this, there one time was at the end of an interview and they brought it up, and then he had her back on to discuss the CMP more. And as you said earlier, yeah, I mean, I don't trust Iserby as far as I can throw her either, but at the same time, she was saying a lot of things that were factual about the group. And what I find is interesting is that I've noticed that depending on their level of power, their level of influence, they seem to have a different line about what the group is, what it does, who's involved in it, and everything else, depending upon their level. Now, Phyllis Schlafly is a very interesting case in all of this because she's like royal blood, she's Merovingian bloodline. They consider her to be in the same bloodline as Christ himself. They consider her to be holy because of she is a Stuart bloodline and a Bruce bloodline. People can look those up on their own.
She was born Phyllis Stewart. Yeah, she was born as Phyllis Stewart. That was her maiden name. Yes, and her mother and on her mother's side were the Bruce bloodline. So very rarely do you have one of these. Normally you have one blue blood here and you have one over here, the mother or the father. But in this case, you had two. And so that was what she was the result of. So that's why I think that they revere her so much. You find this more and more that a lot of these people, that's what separates the CMP from the CFR, is the connection to how many members we have or we've been able to identify over the past 30 years since the group was formed, now going on, 30 years. And we now have the ability to be able to see the influence, the sphere of influence, and also the people that have been involved. We've had DuPonts and Rothschilds and everything else involved in the CMP. So it makes that very interesting. So I think it was totally damage control. And it was absolutely them trying to say, well, people like Phyllis Schlafly just say, well, there's nothing to it, this, that, and the other. And then you find other people that are, maybe not as high up the food chain, people like Jack McLam and people like Jerome Corsi, who just say, oh, yeah, I was in the group. Yeah, it was, oh, man, it's expensive. Man, it's not expensive to Phyllis Schlafly, is it? Now, she doesn't ever bring that up. She just says, they meet for dinner parties and this, that, and the other, and they have conversations, and there's really nothing to it. Well, I just find it interesting, the big, wide range explanations that these guys have attempted to say about this group. I mean, if you take everything that every CMP member has been asked about the group and amalgamate it into one, you would have an explanation that would be, a book worth. Because they all have it, like I said earlier, it's a support group for Reagan. Oh, no, we just meet and we have dinners and everything else, and this, that, and the other. They just sit around and this, that, and then the right wing talks about, what's going on. The reason they keep this group secret, and the reason they've always kept this group secret, is because the group, we now can see this after 30 years worth of looking at seeing who's been involved in it, that the CMP always consists of whoever their big players are at that moment in time in the agenda, who the big media people are,
who their big writers are. That's why you have people like Tom Clancy who are CMP members. Whoever's putting out the writers and everything else. And that's why it makes the most sense that you would have somebody like Alex Jones or somebody like that be involved in this, because, of course, we know that Glenn Beck has been associated with a lot of people in the group. Rush Limbaugh is undoubtedly a member and has been a member of high standing for many years. So we always see
in front of the group. We know that.
Yeah. Well, he's a member as well, from what I understand. Did you come up with contrary information to that, or?
No. I just know that he spoke in front of the group, but you can confirm that he was definitely a member?
Yeah, he's been a member for some years. I think Bob Barr even talked about that. Yeah, there's actually a website. It's called, what was the name of that? I'll have to find this. I'll have to find it during the break. It's a website. It's really good. It connects all of these different. It shows the basically the inner workings and the connections between a lot of these guys in the right wing. It's not Source Watch. It's another one. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's really cool because it'll have like somebody's name, right? It'll say, H.L. Hunt or whoever, and then it'll show, okay, this is how they connect to the Heritage Foundation. This is how they connect to the CMP. This is how they connect to, the Coors Foundation or whatever else. And yeah, there was one of those that had Rush Limbaugh on it, and it showed all of his different connections and where like his money comes in from his sponsor from his radio show. And of course, you had Heritage Foundation. You had a link to him being. I think there was a membership list from the late 90s, I believe, that came out that had Limbaugh's name on it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, the point of the matter is that it shows you that whoever is involved in the current media operation for the right wing is generally involved in this group. And if they were to put that out into the public, that those people were members, if it was put out into the public that Alex Jones was a member of the CMP, then his operation would go by the wayside. Same thing with Glenn Beck. They don't allow their current operatives, for the most part, to be publicly known they're in the group, because this is how, when they have these meetings, they essentially give the marching orders to their flock. And I told you about this piece of information. We have a piece of information that's going to be in the Secret Right Volume 2 that is going to definitively prove all the lies that Jones and Schlafly were talking about on that show. And it's definitively going to prove that all this stuff that Jones has said, and we have all the clips from his radio show, Lee, you have them, I have them, we played them here on the show, where he said, folks, I'd never heard of this group until people started calling me about it. Stuff like that, where he's saying he'd never heard of the group and didn't know what it was, this, that, and the other. And then he comes back later and he's an absolute expert on it. And he's done all this research on it all of a sudden out of nowhere. But this piece of evidence we're going to have in the Secret Right Volume 2, and I'm saving this. We'll bring this out next month on your show. The next time I come on, whenever that is, when the Secret Right 2 is out, and we'll put this information out there. But it's going to prove undoubtedly that Alex Jones is a liar, and that he did know about the CMP as late back as 2006, and quite possibly was inside of a CMP meeting shooting footage for one of his films. So we'll get that information out over the next few weeks and stuff. And because it definitely ties in with some of the stuff we've been talking about tonight. But it is damage control, and they are trying to now own the perimeters of it, because now when somebody brings up the CMP, Jones is going to have a prepackaged answer that he has when people call in and ask about Freemasons. What happens if somebody calls and asks Alex Jones about Freemasons? He says, Porch Masons this, Porch Masons that, blah, blah, blah. He just says that over and over again. He always has a prepackaged answer. So now he'll have a prepackaged answer for the Council for National Policy. When people come in, he'll just say, folks, it's a phony right-wing group, and they infiltrated and they turned it into the CFR. That's all it is, folks. He'll come up and say something like that, and then that'll be all his explanation for it. None of the stuff about his connection to the Jesuits will ever be brought up. None of the connections to Rome, to the Jesuits, to the Knights of Malta. None of this stuff is ever brought up. And then he has the audacity to say, well, there's a CMP witch hunt going on. Wait a second. Isn't this the guy that said that his forefather was the captain of the Mayflower? I mean, weren't these the guys who were doing the witch hunting? I mean, it's just appallingly.
Yeah, there's actually a clip of him actually saying that he is, I guess, a descendant of the Captain Jones that was on the Mayflower. Very, very bizarre stuff there. Of course, the term Mayflower is interesting in the realm and scope of secret societies, considering the Bavarian Illuminati was formed on May 1st, 1776, May Day. I mean, we talked about all that stuff off air, Josh. But you brought up a lot of really interesting points about this whole situation with the Council for National Policy and Jones. And I could tell you this for certain that I checked out the stuff that Josh showed me, and it is 100% verifiable. It is extremely damaging to this man's credibility. Although, I mean, I don't know how he has any credibility left as is, but he has even less credibility after seeing the information that Josh showed me. And I could tell you what, everything that he said about the Council for National Policy and playing dumb and not knowing about it and saying, gee, I'm not sure, the CNP, huh? Gee, I had a professor on one time, playing all dumb about all this information. It is a bold-faced, absolute, total lie. And we'll definitely be talking about that next month. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but I think it's very damaging. And man, I mean, I just don't understand how this man has any sort of credibility left. It's incredible. Now, unfortunately, I think what's happening here is that more people are calling into his show and calling him out on this and asking him questions. But, I mean, we really have to take it to the next level. And I think it's going to happen over the next several months when we get our films out. What do you think, Josh?
Oh, absolutely, man. I think it's going to be, undoubtable after this point, because really what I'm doing in the Zero Volume 2, I'd like to give everybody a little idea about what's going to be in this film and the way the film is going to be. I'm really trying to make it to make the film very different from any of the other things I've ever made in sense of how it flows and the story it tells. But the first part of the film is going to be dedicated to what I mentioned earlier. It's going to show the connections between the first American Civil War. It's going to have Lincoln's quotes on the Jesuits and their influence in creating the Civil War. I'm going to show those connections to the secret societies, and then also the flip side, modern day, and how the CMP individuals relate to those same individuals of Lincoln's time. A little bit on the Kennedy connection, and then a little bit on how it relates to this revolution of armed civil war, the Patriot movement trying to instigate today. That's going to be the first part of the film. Could be one film by itself. Honestly, there's going to be it's going to be like 3 films in one. The middle part of it is going to be all about the pedophilia rings, sex slave rings, how that relates to, of course, the well-documented pedophilia of Vatican and the Jesuits and the rest of that. And we're going to show how that relates to the story of Jeff Gannon, the Franklin cover-up, Johnny Gosch, Jeff Gannon, how they're the same individual, Johnny Gosch's tie-ins with the CMP, also his connections with the people who were involved in Iran-Contra, which then ties in with the connection we already know about with the Jesuits and the Patriot movement and Alex Jones and Adana Khashoggi. So that's going to be the middle part. And then the last part of the film is where we're going to focus in on some of this information about Jones' connections to CMP members and other subsequent people that have been involved in the quote-unquote Truth and Patriot movement. That's going to be the area of the film where, the gloves are going to come off, and any and everybody that I've ever come across that is so much as had one of these guys on their show is going to be on my list. So get ready.
Well, at this point, after doing all this research on this group, I think anybody who has appeared on the Alex Jones show, there needs to be questions about. I mean, plain and simple, at least regular guests. I shouldn't say everybody, but regular guests that he's had on the show, you have to really ask some serious questions about, especially considering all this stuff that's come out on this guy, and these people keep going back on his show. I mean, it's like this addiction. It's like they have to appear in this guy's show so they can sell more of their products and discs. And so nobody has the balls to even come out and criticize him. It's really quite pathetic. And man, I mean, I think at this point, they're going to be forced to put this guy into mainstream media operations more so than they have so far, just based upon the fact that he's becoming more and more discredited. But Josh, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. And I want to bring up this story that came out. Just kind of a very bizarre story, but one of the Loose Change creators or producers, Corey Rowe, apparently he got arrested just a short while ago, like a few days ago. I'm not exactly sure the date. And the article's up on roguegovernment.com if you want to take a look at it. And he was arrested for something to do with drugs and heroin. What do you make of this whole situation? I know there's a lot of questions that have been raised about the the Loose Change crew and how this film rose to such prominence within the 9/11 truth community. And what's your take on this whole thing? Do you think there's anything strange about this?
There was always something strange with the whole Loose Change thing to begin with. I always thought. I mean, just because when you're a filmmaker and especially when you're a filmmaker of these type of topics, you understand that you have generally a very limited, very small budget to work with, and that in that budget of filmmaking, you're probably not going to have a lot of money left to do promotion and advertising and that kind of thing. It's mostly going to be going towards the cost of making the film itself. And so I was always very curious and was also curious about Zeitgeist as well. As another movie they did the same thing with.
I think Zeitgeist was created by the Globalist.
Same thing, but with Loose Change and with Zeitgeist, you both had these instances where these movies were very, very well funded, very well promoted, and were able to reach a megalithic status, not because of their content, but because of the way that they were pushed and promoted and hyped. And I think that you see a lot of movies that fall under that category. I think Loose Change falls under the category of that, same as Zeitgeist. I mean, none of the information in either one of those films is really that hardcore groundbreaking. A lot of it's not even accurate, and a lot of it is taking leaps and bounds and everything else. But you see how those films are allowed to be put out there now. I don't know. I don't want to jump to any judgmental type of conclusions here on this situation with Corey Rowe and the heroin. I feel for the guy if he got himself in a position in his life to where that was his last resort to get by and to make it was to have to sell heroin, then, maybe he can get some help and maybe, he can get through it or whatever. And I feel bad for the guy. But at the same time, with that said, and with me acknowledging that, I also have to look at the fact that he was an ex-military guy. He was in trouble with the law. I remember several years ago for deserting or whatever have you. And then all of a sudden, here he is, and he's involved in, the alleged 9/11 truth movement. And then he gets busted with the product that his superiors over there ensuring gets back to America. It's hard for me to overlook those coincidences and not think that's an operationally, as much as, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, this is horrible because Corey Rowe had heroin and he should, oh my God, it's so bad. I mean, look, everybody's done drugs. Everybody, don't lie out there. Every one of you out there has done some kind of drug in your life, and I've done every drug under the sun, and I'm not afraid to admit it. But that's not the point. The point of the matter is that some people say, oh, well, they try to take a big standpoint on, oh, this is a moral heroin. It's heroin. It's about, no, forget that. Forget the drugs. The fact of the matter is that you should feel bad for this guy. And if he got himself in a life situation, a problem where this was all he had left, then you know what? That's horrible. Nobody should be there. But the fact of the matter is, these guys had tons of money pumped behind them. Somebody had an agenda that they wanted these guys to get out there. They had Zionist Mark Cuban was going to work with them for a while. That was a whole shady thing going on there. I had stories coming back to me from people that were sending me messages back when I first started my show. So saying that, these guys basically blew all their money on drugs out because they all moved out to LA and they got wined and dined and thought they were going to be stars and told they were going to be stars. And nothing ever went anywhere. None of their scripts got picked up by any of the Hollywood movies because Dylan Avery wanted to do Hollywood movies. He wanted to make comic book movies and stuff, and none of their scripts got picked up. So they blew all their money when they moved out there on whatever have you. You give 19, 20-year-old guys a bunch of money that's never had money in their lives and take them out to L.A. and to meet movie stars. They're going to act the fool, man. They're going to do something foolish with it. That's just the nature of the beast. So. Of course, we know that Burmis, had to go live in the tent in Jones's backyard for a while as he was in Minion training. I guess that's part of the Alex Jones Minion training camp. You have to live in the tent in his backyard with the dogs while the housekeeper gets to stay in the nice warm housekeeper's quarters.
Well, hey, Josh, that's what's being.
Estate.
What was the show called? The Info Warrior.
The Info Warrior.
I mean, what a joke! I mean, if he had any sort of self-respect. He was said, no, man, look, this is the Jason Burmis show. This is not the Info Warrior. I mean, what the hell is that?
Yeah, the subsidy of the Alex Jones show.
Right, exactly.
In his studio, with his cameras on. I mean, get your own thing going, dude. I understand.
And then,
I never understood
Jones
that.
would come into his show and interrupt it and just completely sabotage his show. Like when the whole swine flu thing was going on, he basically took over the entire show.
That was a classic podcast.
28 days later in Mexico, everybody's going to die. I mean, literally. And then a day later, he comes out and saying, "Oh, geez, this is all fake and this is all a hoax." And I remember me and you when we were doing our thing on that whole situation. We're saying, "Nah, this is a bunch of crap. They're trying to scare us." Meanwhile, Jones is talking.
Oh man, people gave it to us too, man. They were all. I mean, there were tons of people saying, "Oh, Rogers and Reeves are downplaying this. They're not taking this seriously enough. This is dangerous." And I mean, come on.
It was so transparent. I don't know how people bought into that.
Yeah, that was priceless. I remember that was some good radio right there. Burmas is trying to do a show and the big enchilada's coming in and hijacking it over. And let me get on here and talk, Burmas. I'm taking it over. It's my mic. But anyway, going back to what you're talking about, though, I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh my God, he has no credibility because he was selling heroin. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that because Corey Rowe was busted selling heroin that he has no credibility left. I think there's more to it than that. I mean, that doesn't help his case. But the fact that he's ex-military, the fact that they were so pushed up and propped up, I mean, this is a part of this much bigger operation now. Everybody who's been brought out as a star on the Alex Jones show now seems to be crumbling away. Have you noticed that, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, well, that seems to be modus operandi. I
mean, Willie Nelson's been busted with pot, probably 50 times in his whole life, and they never really make a big deal out of it. But this last time it happened.
Oh, Charlie Sheen.
Oh, well.
Continue about Willie Nelson. I couldn't help myself.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, Charlie Sheen's a complete disaster. My God.
I've got my money on he'll be dead before the week's over, but that's just me. We're getting the death pool going on over on my network. But I mean, seriously, it's about time. I don't think Sheen's got long. But the point of the matter is that all of these people, they never made a big deal about Willie's pot bust ever in years and years and years. And then, of course, after he had appeared on the Jones show talking about 9/11 and all that stuff and conspiracies, then the media make sure they make an extra big deal about Willie's bus getting pulled over and then finding some pot in there. Well, it's Willie Nelson. What did you think you were going to find? Grapefruit? I mean, give me a break. You know you were going to find marijuana. That's why you did it. But they made a big deal out of it this time. And, of course, that gives Jones the opportunity to say, "Found there, they're just going after Willie because he talked about 9/11. That's why they're doing this." And then people believe that. But is that the whole story, or is it more likely that the reason they're making a bigger deal out of this now is because they're trying to attempt to go back and discredit all these people, all these alleged superstars and music stars and movie stars and TV stars that Jones told you is so important are actually a part of this bigger operation? That's exactly what they are. I mean, you look at it. I mean, we know that the mob and the Vatican run Hollywood. They always have. They run the music industry. Why do you think Frank Sinatra was running everything in the music industry when he was around? I mean, back in the heyday, he was running everybody's careers. That's why. I mean, he was a Knight of Malta. He was a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and he was running everything. He was involved with the mob as well. This has never ended, folks. This stuff still goes on today. And, I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. Look into Alex Constantine's work. He does a lot of research and has a lot of good stuff. In fact, Alex Constantine was how I found, because everybody had always asked me for years, Lee, about there being a connection to, what was the guy's name? The guy that was on, that Jones was bringing on for a while, that Lou Dobbs. People were asking me
Dobbs. That guy's a complete fraud.
Oh, yeah. People were asking me for the longest time if he was a CMP member and if he had connections to, the Vatican or to the Knights of Malta or anything else. And, for the longest time, my answer was, well, I just don't know. I haven't seen anything, but, he definitely does cohort with some of those people. Well, it come to find out that from Alex Constantine that, in fact, his lawyer was also the lawyer for the gentleman that was the head of the Knights of Malta in the United States up until his death in the 1990s. You featured him in your film, The Power of the Purse, Lee.
Talking about J. Peter Grace?
Yeah, J. Peter Grace, exactly.
That guy, if anybody wants to take a look at somebody who was really powerful back during the 1970s, 1980s, well, even before that, look into J. Peter Grace. This guy was involved in Project Paperclip. I think I mentioned before in the show, CFR member, of course, the head of the Knights of Malta in the United States, a very powerful individual, well-connected, was on the board of these major corporations. I mean, he certainly was just a major power player back when he was in his heyday back in the 70s and 80s. No question about it.
It's absolutely correct. And so I found that interesting that his lawyer, J. Peter Grace's lawyer, who had represented him all the years through his all of the things that he had done in his life, is now the representative and the attorney for none other than Mr. Lou Dobbs. So that's a nice connection there, isn't it, Lee?
That is interesting. I'll have to look into that one because, I mean, there's just so many tidbits and so much information that you can look at with this group because there's so many connections. There's so many other groups that are tied in with this organization. A lot of groups that I don't think a lot of people have really looked into or even heard of, especially when we look into the Coors family and you take a look at some of the institutions and organizations that they've funded. It's really incredible. I'm going to be trying to highlight some of that stuff in my film on these groups. But just to finish up with Corey Rowe, I always found it kind of weird when he got arrested for deserting the military or going AWOL. He said that he was honorably discharged, but one of the things that he could have easily done to prove that he was honorably discharged was just to publish his D-214, which is basically your discharge documents. And Josh, that was in the military for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's something that a lot of people like to point to say, well, Lee's a phony, he's a fraud because he was in the military for a couple of years or whatever. And I mean, it doesn't bother me. It's just one of those things where, I'm not getting up here talking about this stuff because I expect you to believe anything that I say. I expect you to look into it for yourself. You shouldn't trust me or Josh, even you or anybody. I mean, everybody should be doing the research for themselves and just to check it out, not based upon what I say, but check out for yourself and determine if it's true by yourself. I guess is what I'm trying to say. But when you get discharged from the military, you get your DD-214, and that could have easily cleared up anything. So I'm not exactly sure why he didn't do that. It just seemed kind of odd to me.
Yeah, it is very odd. I don't know. It seemed that the real reason why he deserted in the first place has been sort of, up for his own explanation. I don't know. It could very well be that he never deserted, and that was a cover story, and that actually what he was doing was going into special ops or going into this undercover, because the loose change guys admitted that the whole idea for making the film, they were like working in like James Gandolfini's restaurant or something like that. And
yes.
He gave them the idea for it, and they essentially came at it from the standpoint of they didn't believe any of it. And they were trying to debunk and discredit all theories on 9/11. And their story is that they, after looking at the evidence, they were convinced that it actually was the official story was a fraud and whatnot, which seems to me a bit odd because it seems to me like it very well could have been, this thing where they were put out as these operatives. Their job was to be debunkers, and then once they found out, this information, they go back and report that to the powers that be, and the powers that be say, okay, now go act like, you're a part of the revolution, you're a part of exposing this. I mean, it very well could be, because that's how a lot of their operations work, exactly like that.
Sure, yeah, well, absolutely. So, I mean, it's really hard to say what this whole thing was all about, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting story, and I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to what's really going on with it, but clearly there are a lot of operations. There's a lot of strange stuff that transpired with this, and I think you're right. I think the analogy you brought up with the Zeitgeist film is interesting, because here are a couple of films that really just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's being talked about everywhere. All of a sudden there's all this money that's been poured into these operations. I mean, Zeitgeist, I think they just came out with a third Zeitgeist film. I haven't had the chance to take a look at it.
I haven't either.
But I mean, that film is they're like showing that film in like, I forget, it's like 50 or 60 countries or something like that. I mean, you can't show a film in that many countries unless you have some serious financial backing.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the point. And I think I've seen that with several of these films. What was the other one? There was a 9/11 film that way too. What was the name of that one, Lee?
I'm trying to think.
Remember, we talked about it quite a bit. It was that real big budget one that came out in Italy.
Oh, yeah, Zero, an investigation to 9/11.
Yes,
yeah, there's $2 million something dollars that are poured into that. Millions. I mean, it was probably the best 9/11 film that came out. Period.
Well, I know for a fact the effects that I saw in that and the effects that I saw in the later Zeitgeist films, I guess, the Venus Project stuff or whatever, and some of the other ones, Zeitgeist 2 or whatever. I know for a fact some of the stuff that I saw in that was movie house stuff. That's not stuff somebody's just doing at home on their computer and stuff. That's like, we're talking about when, you got to go rent the room and rent the editors and rent the person that's how to run it and stuff like that. And you're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. No question. And those are definitely coming from somewhere and probably coming from the same sources that have the ability to, let Alex Jones give somebody $10,000 to put posters up or something and take video of it. You know what I mean? I mean, this money's coming from somewhere.
Yeah, and of course we know that a lot of this money, it comes from establishment sources. I mean, somebody doesn't just have millions of dollars lying around that they're going to be throwing at these things. So,
hey, Lee, I hate to interrupt you, sir, but I'm getting reports that I think they must not like what we're talking about or something, because a lot of people are saying that our voices sound digitized and scrambled right now, and people are having trouble understanding what we're saying. We need to reconnect.
Okay, let's take a break and let's reconnect, because I was getting some feedback and some weird stuff happening on my end. So that's what we'll do. We're going to play some music for a little bit, then we'll come back in a couple of minutes and reconnect, hopefully get this all straightened out. Let me load up some music and we'll continue the show.
Cool.
Yeah, sometimes these things happen, but yeah, I was getting some feedback on my end. So yeah, we will be back in a few minutes, and all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I think we straightened out whatever gremlins were in the system. I hope we're coming in loud and clear. Again, I'm joined here by my guest, Josh Reeves. You can check out his website at theglobalreality.com. And we're going to try to go the rest of the way. We got about an hour and something, maybe like an hour and 5 minutes left in the show. So we're going to go the rest of the way commercial free and music free the entire way. So got a lot of stuff still to get into. Also, if anybody wants to email a question into us, you can email me at lrogers, that's LROGERS, at oraclebroadcasting.com. Looks like I have a few emails that have come in, and we'll answer those probably in the third hour. But if you want to email a question, or if you have a comment or anything that you want us to address, feel free to email that address. Again, that's lrogers, LROGERS, at oraclebroadcasting.com. We'll try to answer your question as best we can. Oh, my goodness. I mean, Josh, there's so much going on. It just makes my head spin. I mean, with the controlled opposition, Patriot movement, with what's happening in Egypt. I'm looking at some of these headlines that have come out recently. Let me see here. Where's some of these headlines that have come out? Just look at some of the stuff up my website. Let's see here. What are a few that we can get into? There's so much stuff. I'm kind of overwhelmed here. Where's a good one that we can get into? Oh, yeah. How about this one? Josh, what do you think about this one? Rumsfeld to receive Defender of the Constitution Award at CPAC. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, if standing up and protecting the Constitution is standing up and protecting the United States for warmongers and white aristocratic landowners, then I would say that Mr. Rumsfeld definitely deserves the honor.
Yeah, he probably does. I guess it's fitting that he received something like that. I mean, what do you make of what's going on with China? That was big news a few weeks ago, with the Chinese president coming over here. And I mean, it's pretty clear that the Chinese own us at this point. But they have the state dinner for the Chinese and the Chinese flag up at Times Square. What do you think about this Chinese takeover?
Well, it's becoming pretty apparent that that's what's going on, and of course, with some of the news that's coming out now, they're saying that that they're trying to get people to buy off the rest of the debt and get the United States to essentially just acquiesce to China's wishes. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're going to basically use us to do the wars for them, and indeed that's what's going on now, to obtain resources for China. I mean, that's essentially why they own us and why they haven't Red Dawned us as of yet. But I find that interesting that's what the Red Dawn remake is going to be about, is essentially that happening, China coming in and taking over and everything. I don't know. I'm also one of those people that also tries not to believe too much of the hype, but the fact of the matter is, China and Russia are taking over as the world predominant superpowers, and everything that pertains to resource wars, the new monetary system, one world monetary system, ultimately revolves around that. And that's why I think that, that they are going to stage some war between China and the United States. But as any other war, it's going to be basically based on a lie, because the fact of the matter is only agreements that were made between the leadership in both China and the United States could have allowed us to gotten to the point where we are at. This has been a part of the operation. So any subsequent war that breaks out, I mean, I'd be really surprised if they decide to go that route, China versus the United States. People are saying that, but I mean, I think it would blow up in their faces at this point, because but at the same time, they don't care if it blows up in their faces. That's what they want, is they want everybody mad. But I do have to say that it's documented that all of these trade deals and everything that they've done to get cheap imports into the United States has been done through handshake agreements and backroom deals with the United States government and the Chinese government for years and years and years. So this has been systematically going that way for a great amount of time, and it's all part of every country of the world not being necessarily that sovereign country anymore. It's going to be, every country in the world is going to be a subsidiary of some other country. That's essentially what they want. As we talked about earlier, Egypt becoming a subsidiary of Saudi Arabia, or the United States becoming a subsidiary of China. I think what they're going to do, and I think the reason that they shipped all of our manufacturing base out of this country for years and years and years, and now everybody's turned around in places like Detroit, which are ghost towns, because the manufacturing is gone forever and it ain't coming back. And that's just the way it is. And I think that they're going to do a turnaround, honestly, where essentially what they're going to do is how they're going to sell people on the rebuilding of the Chinese economy, or our economy based on the Chinese model, is this. Well, let me give you an example. Right prior to 9/11, I worked for a software company that creates the software called TurboTax. It was called Intuit. That was a company that I worked for, and I worked for them for a couple of years and made very good money right prior to 9/11. And of course, after 9/11, they laid us off for about 6 months and brought us back. And when they brought us back 6 months later, we all were taking a $3 to $4 pay cut in order to get our jobs back. So essentially what they did was they got rid of our jobs. They paid us, they paid us severance and all this stuff when they got rid of us. They eliminated our job for 6 months, brought us back, gave us our same jobs back at a lesser pay rate. And everybody just took that as if it was, acceptable. And then, of course, about a year later, they shipped all those jobs off to India. Well, I think that's what they're doing here. They're essentially shipping all the manufacturing off to China. And then when China becomes the predominant power and the labor costs and the monetary value goes down even farther than it is right now in the United States, they're going to do exactly to us what they did to create the labor market in China and India and Calcutta, all these places, is minimize us down to where the labor is cheap because people are desperate and the money's not worth anything. And then they'll start moving the Chinese factories back over into the United States. The United States workers will then take these jobs again at a lesser pay rate with where their money buys less and it's worth less and everything else. And then that will be claimed probably by Obama or whoever else comes after him that is economic reform. And they saved the economy by bringing back these jobs and essentially farming them out to United States workers at a less cost, because that's exactly, they're building up China. They're building these massive, sprawling, gigantic super cities over there now. And once it gets to the point where their cost of living exceeds how much they can pay the wagers and the slave laborers and still stay in business, they'll just flip it around and do the same thing here. I think that's what's coming.
Well, it's all about forming this global plantation. This is a global slave system in which you have a bunch of workers that don't get really paid a whole lot to ever make it out of where they are. They want to eliminate the possibility of a society in which people can move up the ladder and better themselves. And of course, I mean, technology is starting to get so advanced, it's going to get to the point where they won't even need human beings to do all these tasks and perform all these jobs. So they need us now, but we're getting to the point where technology, again, it's advancing so fast that pretty soon the human being could become outdated.
Well, let's talk about that though, Lee.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then what are they going to do with all these people?
Well, that's the question.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Right.
that's something we all need to be contemplating, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Well, of course, we know about the depopulation agenda and all that stuff. But the question is how they're going to go about doing that. And right now, I think their plans for depopulation have failed miserably. I mean, they've been successful in some regards, but still the population of the world keeps rising. So they're having a real problem with that, seems like.
Yeah, and then that's why I think it makes it all the more pertinent and all the more important with what we do with these radio shows and our films and whatnot is documenting this stuff day in, day out and trying to see every angle of it. Because the fact of the matter is, if that is, and I think my research definitely coincides with what you just said there, Lee, which is the technology progressing to the point where humans become antiquated. Okay, so if that's provable, and I believe it is provable 100%, then what happens to all those antiquated people who aren't going to be able to be having jobs anymore because of the technology? What happens to them? How do they obtain wealth or money or anything else? Or is the next step, like you said, the next depopulation? Okay, well, then all of the things that we point out as depopulation should be the evidence for the naysayers out there that this is indeed what is going on. Now, I personally think that it's going to be a merging of the two. I'm convinced beyond any reason really at this point that that's how they're going to sell us on, saving the planet and, green, not using as much of a carbon footprint, all this stuff is by, I just have these images in my head of just acres and acres and acres of just big, climate controlled warehouses, full of people jacked into the grid, jacked into the matrix, essentially living their lives out on this digital grid so that they're not, leaving this carbon footprint in the real world with all this activity. I think that's how they're going to sell it. The combination of humans and merging with humans in combination with, okay, well, it's either this or we get rid of everybody. I just can't help but think that any solutions they are going to offer us into the future that have to do with, allegedly saving mankind from its own destruction is going to have to do with merging with machines. I just think all the evidence points in that direction.
Well, yeah, the whole transhumanist thing is very interesting. And of course, we've talked about that a lot on shows that we've done in the past. It's a very intriguing subject, especially when we consider how fast technology continues to advance. I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that we'd be able to do half the stuff that we're doing now in terms of communication and videos, I would have said, no, it can't happen that fast. Well, a lot of this stuff has really progressed extremely quickly. So we can only imagine where we'll be in our 10 years or so, or in our 20 years, or in our 30 years. And you can see some of the predictions that some of these futurists have put out there, and you can look at these science fiction movies, and that could kind of give you a good grasp as to where we'll be within those time frames. It's very interesting. But Josh, here's another story that I kind of want to get your take on. Ground at Yellowstone swells dramatically. I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently there's some interesting activity occurring in Yellowstone National Park, which is very interesting considering that the 2012 film that came out just a little while ago, one of the main themes of the film is this event that occurs at Yellowstone, in which Woody Harrelson is basically screaming at at this volcano that just erupted, and of course it gets swept away. What's your take on this? And of course, what's your take on the link to the 2012 movie?
Well, I found it interesting that there had been all of these different news stories that had come out, and two came out. I covered this on my show last week. There's several clips and stuff up on YouTube. A lot of our listeners now are taking clips of my show and your show and putting them up on YouTube, and it's great. And some of their daily of my show. And I talked extensively about that last week. And what I found was this, Lee. There has been just numerous amounts of stories over the years about this, erupting at Yellowstone and creating an extinction level event and wiping out, 60% of North America, whatever else, they claim. But what was interesting in this National Geographic article that came out, it had this, title of about this eruption, all this information, and then it goes on in the article to say, but don't worry about it. No, we don't have any evidence anything's going to happen. It's okay. nothing's going to, and then I started going, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. I heard from a lot of other, reliable sources that this is a cyclical thing that happens like everything on Earth, and that, this, could very well be in danger of happening sometime soon. And of course, in this National Geographic article, they were just trying to say, oh, no, don't worry about it. I always take anything they say as the opposite, Lee. That whole connection there with 2012 is highly interesting, especially when, there's all the indicators that we've got a pole shift going on right now. The dead bird situation around the world, the Earth is losing its magnetic field daily. They've had to repaint stripes on the some of the airport markers because of this change. So it's
that's airport. Yes,
yeah, that's one of the provable things is that pole shifts do happen on this planet. And I'll tell you another interesting tie-in is that when I was looking into this stuff about the New Madrid Fault event and how they're having these national level exercises in May for that exact scenario happening, a massive earthquake along the New Madrid Fault line that would kill millions of people and basically put a big sinkhole in the middle of the country, dividing the country down the middle. What's interesting is that some of the maps and stuff they were showing that showed the state of Wisconsin basically being just completely engulfed by this New Madrid earthquake happening. And so that tie-in that you mentioned there with 2012 with the Yellowstone thing, because that's where the opening part of the movie takes place, with Cusack and all that. And
right.
So, that connection there is very interesting. And one of the things on there's a picture of one of the radar screens. If you stop it and pause it, you can zoom in. They're talking about the poles shifting. And they say they're on like the NORAD command center. Like, look, sir, the poles, we've had a complete pole shift. The new magnetic North Pole is now in Wisconsin. And they show Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's like obliterated, and Wisconsin is where the new North Pole is. So I thought that was another one of those interesting things that, when they were talking about the simulations for this New Madrid earthquake happening that FEMA is conducting drills for in May, it had showed basically, and I think the Edgar Casey map shows that as well. It shows basically Wisconsin just, in the sinkhole. So that to be in 2012, another little tie-in. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're dropping these little hints in there and little clues for us. But that's what we have to, as they say, have eyes to see. If you have eyes to see it, you can see these little hints are being dropped. I don't know what to think, Lee, but I think somebody behind the scenes is trying to send us a message. I think there is somebody out there that knows what is going on, which also ties into my belief that we have a massive supercomputer system running the world and running the show, and that's how humans are now trying to communicate and get the word out that there is this massive supercomputer running the show. Because if you can get things that translate not through words but through images and things that that people can relate to by getting the picture without having to come right out and say it, that would be something a computer couldn't pick up on. I think it's happening. I think somebody's trying to alert us that some of this stuff is going on. I mean, in the Nicolas Cage movie, Knowing, there were so many things in that. And there's also a scene where at the beginning of the movie where Nicolas Cage is sitting on the couch watching TV, and it goes, you start seeing this news thing about this giant oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And it shows the screen and it shows the fire, and it looks just like the oil spill that came, a year or so after that. So I think these little things are being slipped in more and more. You got to wonder why, if there's nothing to it.
There's just so much going on. It's really, man, it makes your head spin with all this information that just keeps coming out. Very hard to keep track of it all, but definitely some very interesting correlations with Yellowstone and, of course, some of the seismic activity, the various weather patterns that we've been seeing, the pole shifting, of course. I mean, you basically have the magnetic north. It shifted such an extent where, as you mentioned, Josh, that the markers had to be rearranged at the Tampa airport, and that's not something that typically happens. So there's certainly a lot of stuff happening and a lot of stuff going on. There's no question about it. I don't think a lot of it can be explained easily. But hey, Josh, about 50 minutes left in the show. I guess I figured we'd get into some of these emails.
Yeah, sounds
that
good.
We got. Let me see. How many emails do we have here? Okay, we got about 4 of them. Let me see. We'll try to get to all of them. And again, if anybody wants to email and ask us a question, or if you have a comment, just shoot me an email. Again, it's lrogers, LROGERS, at oraclebroadcasting.com, and we'll try to get to your question or your comment. Okay, let's start with the first one. Let's see what we have here. Okay, this is from Cosmo. Steve Quayle said he would not go on Jones anymore. What do you think about that, Josh?
Oh, well, I guess then I guess it's safe at this point for us to say that the prophecy has been fulfilled.
Yeah,
so
and also another thing that I heard is that I guess that Quayle is now saying that he's going to be more inclined to talk about the Council for National Policy. I know one of the Intel Hub guys, he's in touch with him, and so I guess he's going to be trying to expose some of that stuff, but I'm not 100% sure.
Wow, okay.
We'll see. I don't know. I'm not, again, that's through the grapevine, so I can't confirm that, but again, that goes into what you were saying about the fights and all the stuff that goes on between so-called patriots and whatnot. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, it definitely is. It just cracks me up though, because you can always tell when one of these guys is start to happen. I don't know. I mean, part of me believes that there is an operation to try and pin people and show people as being infighters when it comes to this stuff. But then there's also part of me that knows that, man, I question these guys who have had associations with Jones for years and never had anything cross to say about him. Those are the ones I suspect more than the ones that have had a falling out with him, really. Because, I mean, everybody else's testimony is, man, I couldn't work with a guy more than 5 minutes. I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, we were only involved with this type of radio and this type of information, like actively. Jeez, I don't know, maybe like a year, or even a little less than that. I think around that time frame, and I mean, just over time, you start to just have more questions about everything this guy does, and then when you finally start digging into it, you realize that hey, there's certainly something wrong here, and of course. There is something wrong. There's something seriously wrong with that whole operation down there. And well, that's why the corporate media continues to support him. And it's going to continue to support him for quite some time, it looks like. Let's try in our email that we have. Okay, this person's got a lot of questions. So let's just try to get into all of them, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one, I don't know what this is. Maybe you can shed some light on this, Josh. Have you heard anything about AMREN 2011? AMREN 2011. I don't know what that is. Do you have any idea what that is, Josh?
What was it again? Say it one more time. AMREN 2011?
Yeah, AMREN. So it's A as in Alpha, M as in Mike, R as in Romeo, E as in Echo, N as in Napalm or November.
It says that... I don't know anything about it. I'm reading here. I just typed it in. It says AMREN 2011. There are conflicting reports that 2011 AMREN conference in Charlotte has been canceled due to anti-racist pressure. But it doesn't say what AMREN is. Let me try to find this. It says the white race is going to February 4th, 2011 American Resistance. Oh, I guess it's some kind of white power thing.
American Resistance Network. Is that what it stands for?
Yeah, I guess so.
Huh. Well, I don't know. I guess neither of us really have a whole lot of information on that one.
I don't really keep up with all the goings on of the white power meetings. I know that a lot of those guys are involved with a lot of the Council for National Policy types. I mean, I know that, but as far as AMREN or something like, I don't know anything about the get-togethers of the Aryan Brotherhood or the white power thing or so. I don't know. I mean, I know all those guys are at the highest levels. They have leaders and operatives and whatnot just as much as anybody else does. But I don't know that I've met people that have been into that stuff before, and it just to me it seems like another phony box, another cattle cart.
Well, yeah, you got people like William Luther Pierce, who of course is. I mean, that guy. Just look into him and you'll see his connections back to all sorts of characters that have been tied in with the JBS and the Liberty Lobby and our groups along those lines. So there's always been this loose connection between the white supremacist groups, the neo-Nazis, as well as the John Birch Society and groups like that. And they do that intentionally, in my opinion, because it's an easy way to discredit any information, any at least relevant information that they talk about. And that's why the corporate media always says, "Oh, well, those JBSers, they're racist or they're anti-Jew or whatever. It's just it's an operation. But
I've got the website up here now, amarin.com. AmericanRenaissance.com, and yeah, it's standard, standard
white supremacist.
White supremacist. Also, what's the other website? There's a website I was about to say there that I couldn't say. What was the name of it? Stormfront.
Stormfront is a
There's
big one.
Average Stormfront fare here is what it really looks like to me. I don't know. Why Race Matters by Michael Levin is a book they have listed here. This is, I don't know, man. This is another part of the operation as well. These people are, being taught and told that there's a race war coming. You have things like the, what was that? What was that book that went around for a long time, Lee?
Yeah, that was Turner Diaries. That was Pierce. And he wrote under the pseudonym, what was it, Andrew McDonald, I believe?
Yeah. It's been sort of the underbelly of the Patriot movement, truth movement for a great many years. And it is an element of it. I mean, there is an element of people that believe that there's a war that's going to go on between the Goyim and the Jews. And a lot of these people who believe that the Jews are the tip top of the power structure are oftentimes involved in these kind of groups. And the hatred is what disgusts me. There's no love in what they do. It's all hate.
Yeah, it's just a way to divide people amongst racial lines and religious lines, and that's something that they've done time and time again, is to use people's differences against them. But anyway, let me continue on with some of the other questions here. Now, here's an interesting one. This is kind of it's kind of a strange question, but Josh, again, maybe you'll know more about this. What do you know about Jim Marrs and his connections to Scientology? I've never heard this. This is crazy. I mean, is there any factual information to prove this, or is this just all hearsay?
First off, I've never heard that.
Neither have I. That's why.
Second off, if there is a connection to it, I mean, you're asking us. Obviously, that question is based in some sort of appellation or something you heard. So I don't know if maybe you can give us more information. You're asking. What do we know about Jim Marrs' Scientology? The answer to that question would be nothing. I know nothing of that.
Okay, yeah, let's just move on. He gives a link here, but I don't know.
If they want, they can if they want to send their stuff to me and I can look at it later. I can talk about it on my show. They can send it to my email address, which is globalrealityshow@gmail.com. I can look that up. Jim Marrs is the guy whose book I read that got me involved. Started looking at this stuff when I was about 16. I've had a chance to meet with him and hang out with him several times and stuff. I would be less concerned about whether or not he was connected to Scientologists, which I doubt, and be more concerned with why he doesn't discuss some of these connections to the John Birch Society, to the Knights of Malta, the Schick Skinny Knights of Malta Lodge, and their connections and involvement. And some of these types that are involved in the secret right that were involved in the Kennedy assassination. I mean, he never talks about that. That's one of the things that Jim Marrs, I just hadn't talked to him about this stuff since I started finding out about it. But, that's the kind of stuff where Jim Marrs would want you to do. He would want you, because that's the same thing that we tell you. He would want you to go out like I did and find the things that he didn't find, which is essentially what I've done. But that, to me, if you were going to question something about Marrs, it should be something about his research or any researcher. I mean, if somebody puts out factual stuff and they don't give you a half truth and they don't try to hide one end of the spectrum, and you can tell by your own research that they are indeed factual with their work, then that's a good thing. But the fact of the matter is that there's just too much obfuscation and too much lies and too many half-truths going around, and I think we have to be skeptical of everybody. And when somebody leaves out something is important in that, it should be brought up. Whether or not he's a Scientologist or something, that's less important to me than why he doesn't talk about the other connections to the Jesuits and the John Birch Society to Kennedy, really.
Yeah, that's just kind of a strange question. Let me see what our questions there are in this email. I've never heard of these people, so I'll just throw the names out there. Jamie Kelso, Richard Lynn, Gert Wilders. Have you heard of any of these people?
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay, Carolyn Yeager. mean, all the questions surround these people. I've never heard of any of them. So, I don't know. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm just, I'm confused, man. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, do we have and I'm not trying to be rude at all to any of you listeners out there. Honestly, I just have to ask this question because this is 2 in a row. I mean, are there a lot of white supremacist, white power type of people listening to the audience tonight? It's weird because if you do a quick search on any of those names that Lee just thrown out, one of the names you get, Jamie Kelso, is the administrator and owner of the American white nationalist website White News Now. I'm just wondering, is there an obsession with people? I mean, do you guys tune into our shows because we talk about the kind of stuff you think supports, white power and the white brotherhood and the takeover of the white power? Because if you do, I'm going to tell you, I'm not speaking for Lee, I'm speaking for me. I don't represent that, and I'm not for that. And if you're trying to think that I'm somehow associated with that, I don't. So I don't know. Don't you think that's weird, Lee? We'd get 2 questions that would concern some of this white power stuff.
It's weird. Well, all these questions come from one person, but I mean, this happened last time. I remember we got a bunch of questions about white supremacists and things like that. So I mean,
we got some white power people in the audience tonight. I mean, do we need to zig heil for everybody and show them our leads? What's going on here?
I don't know. I guess I don't know. Weird stuff. I don't know. I guess. To a certain extent, a lot of this conspiratorial information, you tend to get people like that who tune in. But I guess it's just part of the beast. But it is kind of surprising because I didn't think that people like that would really be into my show or a lot of the shows, even on this network. But
I'll tell you what, man. I got to say, from my experience, I used to have a boss, and I used to notice that every time I'd go look at his computer, he'd always have like Prison Planet and like Rents and stuff. And I started talking to him one time about some of this stuff, and he was actually in the white supremacists. This guy had told me that he brought the white supremacists to Texas, and his parents were big time. I think his dad was like a big head up guy in AIG. I mean, one time I took a call at work, and they said, "Oh, I just wanted to remind so and so. I'm not going to say their name on air. I want to remind them of their dinner with the Bushes on Friday." And this guy went on to tell me how his dad was in jogging races with Bush Sr. and all this stuff. And I'd always, talk to him, and he knew all about the Illuminati. He knew all about the New World Order. He knew all about the Anunnaki and all this stuff. But the reason that he did, Lee, this is very interesting, and I found this more and more, that the white supremacist people know more about the whole Anunnaki seeding the bloodline thing than anybody else, because and this guy thought this as well. And he had a swastika tattoo and everything, dude. This guy was hardcore. But he just seemed like, if you didn't know that about him, you just think he was just some regular middle-aged guy. You would never know it. But, I got to know him and stuff, and he was telling me all this. And he was all into the Turner Diaries, all kind of just, said it was the Bible and everything else. But, he knew all about these things. And from talking to him, he told me that basically the white supremacist movement and the Aryans believe that the Anunnaki, when they created the demigods, the ones that they put in positions of power through the genetic manipulation that had the most Anunnaki DNA that they made with the people from the Caucasus Mountains region, that's why they believe that. They believe in that because that proves why they're the master race, because they believe that whites are the master race because they have the most DNA of the gods. So these things that you and I, or we might talk about in our research, that's just to us a part of explaining why the people that are in power are in power. In fact, I'm going to make a film on the bloodlines after we do the Secret Volume 2. I'm going to really get into that because I think it's important. Some of the stuff we were talking about with Schlafly earlier as well ties in. But that's the big thing that you find is that to us, that's just another piece of the puzzle. But to the white supremacist types, they believe that proves why, the whites are supposed to be in power. And it definitely ties into, Hitler's obsession with the occult and technology and the Golden Dawn and then going and searching for Shambhala and all this stuff. It's very fascinatingly, but I think that might be, part of the reason why people are, I don't know, I just find that weird that we've got all these people asking about white supremacist stuff. I don't know. It's bizarre.
It is kind of strange, but it's interesting. William Luther Pierce, the guy who wrote the Turner Diaries, he actually founded a religion called cosmotheism, which is basically this white racial religion focused around eugenics and the perfection of man. It's kind of like what Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati believed in with the whole perfection of man concept, only it was dedicated specifically for the white race. It's a very bizarre religious concept that he created, but you can look into that and check it out for yourself. Very, very strange stuff. But
let's
Josh,
see if we got any more questions.
Yeah. I was about to go to some other questions. Got a few more emails that came in. Okay, here's one from, I think this is one of your listeners, Josh, Black Sheep.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick, a.k.a. Black Sheep. He asked, what do you guys think about the two separate capitals in America and the continuous connections to the Western areas for the Council of Financial Policy types? Examples include McLam and its Freeman Society in Idaho. And do you think we'll be seeing stricter immigration methods like in Arizona for our Western states? And if so, is this related to the Christian identity movement? So it's basically a couple questions there. Josh, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on that because I have several different ideas of what could possibly play out in that scenario. And the thing about it is, Lee, is these are all just really hypotheses based on different pieces of information. Some of them true, some are things that are just possibilities. Any one of these things can happen. We know that they've been setting up a new capital of government in Denver. We know that's a fact. They've been setting up a new capital there. This idea, what we talked about earlier with the New Madrid fault and some massive HAARP engineered earthquake possibly going down there, since they're running all these drills around there, would cause a big split in the United States. And that could be one of the things where, you had various parts of the United States broken up off into territories. And I think that whether it comes as a result of an engineered disaster like that, or whether it comes as a result of a new civil war in this country where, as Nick was saying there in his questions, each part of the country being broken up into, this part over here has this jurisdiction. I think that they do want that. I think that that's what the Christian Reconstructionists definitely want. And a lot of those are involved in the CMP. The Christian Reconstructionists talk about, creating, a subsection of the United States where, you had states that secede from the Union and other, Texas secedes from the Union and other join, and they essentially want to set up, their own rule of law under the Ten Commandments rule of law. And it's Christian Reconstructionism. So, there's a very good possibility that we could have one section of the population that is for, the people who want to live over here and live under liberal rule or socialist rule, people over here that want to live under the Christian theocracy rule, people over here that, it definitely is a possibility. Things could play out like that. It would give the powers that be much more control to have the United States broken up into little, proxy countries and proxy areas, and would definitely play into everything else in the agenda. So, I don't think that anything that he had asked about there, Lee, seems far-fetched to me. Any one of those things could play out that way. Okay,
let's see if we can take in our question here. Oh, shoot, I just lost my place. Okay, let's see. Next question. Okay, to the Jim Mars question, what do you think about the fact that he does say the Nazis run the United States? What do you think about that, Josh?
I'd have to disagree with that, yeah.
I don't know.
I'd have to disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Man, it's not far-fetched to say that the people and the powers that be that were behind the Nazis are still in charge of the country. Absolutely. I mean, we've got pictures of of the cardinals and pictures of the Pope with Hitler and with other Nazis. And of course, when you look at the Nazis' use of the Maltese Cross and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and then those connections with the Jesuit order. The same people that were involved with Nazis are definitely in charge today. But to say that the proper per se the Nazis are still in charge, I wouldn't agree with that. But yes, definitely the progeny of the Nazis. I'll give you that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the people who funded the Nazis are the same people who are in control of this country.
Sure.
It's really just part and parcel of the same system.
But you need to say it the right way. I think that's probably what the listener is probably asking about, because if you just say Nazis run the United States, that's patently not true.
Right, exactly. It's just, it's kind of semantical arguments are being made. Right, exactly. All right, let's see what our emails we have here. This one comes from Rick, who I know was one of your listeners as well. He says here, Lee, it seems like this white supremacy email thing during the show was a troll operation, and it seems like somebody's trying to troll you guys and tar you with that brush. I bet they're feds. That's just my opinion. Don't let it get to you. Awesome job, guys. Well, I don't know, Josh. I mean, there is an element of these types of people that, of course, troll around in chat rooms and on message boards. And a lot of them may be operatives. I don't know. I mean, some people just, for whatever reason, they just want to start up trouble and create problems just to disrupt what people are trying to do. And I mean, my thing is that if you don't like what somebody's doing, or you don't like what a group of people are doing, start up your own operation or start up your own platform, and do your own radio show, do your own website, because I mean, it's easy to do now. I mean, there's so many tools available at your disposal in which you can absolutely have your own platform and put out your own message. So I encourage people to do that. And I don't know. I don't understand why people troll around. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, there's various reasons. Some are operations, some are idiots, some are just bored loser people. There's all make and models of those type of things. I think it's interesting though when what I always like to do is to see which ones say what, and then see where their IP address comes from to see what area they're located in. And I find it very interesting that the ones that always come into my room and say negative stuff. Well, we had the one the other night that said they were going to kill me and shoot me down. Was from Ogden, Utah. The other ones that we get the most, and they basically what this person does is they sit in the PMs, and when people come to the chat room, they PM the person that comes in the chat room, and they just say a bunch of lies about me to try to get the person going in the chat room to think bad about me. And every time that this person does this, I get their IP, and lo and behold, they're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is home to a certain radio network. And then another one that we get, and I've seen this one in your chat room too. Another one we get comes from an area in Pennsylvania where it just so happens to be infested with Jesuit schools, the Chick Skinny Knights of Malta Lodge, and you see this particular person go into chat rooms, and every time you or me or somebody says something about the Jesuits and Alex Jones or the Knights of Malta, this person immediately says, "Oh, that's a lie, that's a lie," and to see somebody's IP address coming in from, the heart of where, all these Jesuit institutions are, and where everybody almost there that lives in those areas are Jesuits, you can see what some of this is. So, yeah, I think some of these guys are operators. I think other ones are just just plain idiots,
Well, it is pretty interesting, that's for sure. It gets stranger and stranger day by day, that's for sure. Okay, let me see. We got our email here. Let me see here. Okay. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is from John. I was wondering if you guys ever looked into Rick Clay's work and your thoughts on that. Also, what is a good way to combat the Alex Jones campaign? I thought the V for Vatican slogan you had, Lee, was good. Maybe print out posters and put those out. But on the other hand, you're still putting this cult sign up, so it's a catch-22. Also, what's up with FEMA and body bags, or the body bags? Thanks, guys, for all your research and knowledge. Josh, have you looked into Rick Clay's stuff? Because I've seen some of his work with the London Zionist Olympics, or the New Zion, which is kind of interesting. And, of course, some of the alien stuff that is tied back into, was it the 1984 closing ceremony of the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. He had some interesting stuff that was put out there. And, of course, it's my understanding that he passed away at a relatively young age. I mean, he was in his late 20s.
He was suicided. Yeah.
Yeah.
They made it say, this guy had done interviews. Yeah. I was a big fan of his work, actually. And he was allegedly came from a family of people that were involved in the Illuminati. And so a lot of the stuff that he had come out with was really real insider type of information. And the story is, that they had basically killed him, made it look like a suicide. And this guy had been on Red Ice and other shows just prior to that, and people had talked to him. He didn't ever, acted like somebody who wanted to die. He was very much into the research and everything else. So, I think that his information is right on, and what little information we have, so that he was able to get out there, is great. So, Rick Clay. And make sure if you're looking for him, you spell his name R-I-K. Not if you try to spell it R-I-C-K, you may not find it. So it's R-I-K, Rick Clay. So that's how you can find it if you're looking for him. Yep. And what was the other question there? Also in that email.
Let me see here. Well, he asked what's going on with FEMA and the body bags.
You know,
which is kind of a strange question after the Rick Flake question, but yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that. Look, let's just say, for instance, let's forget for a second everything that we know. I know that's difficult, but just forget for a second everything that you know. Forget everything you know about and you've ever heard about the fear mongering of FEMA camps and death and destruction in 2012 and, wars and all this stuff. Just forget all that for a moment and understand that if you're trying to effectively run a country that consists of as many people as we have, it would be in anyone's best interest, even if you were living in a utopia, for you to have contingency plans and things of that nature for mass disasters or widespread death. So there is a very good chance that some of these things that people are attempting to use on the Alex Jones show to fearmonger people and to say, see, this is proof that they're, going to put us in FEMA camps and kill us all, could very well be an overreaction to, what are always contingencies are always going to be there. Even if we lived in a utopia, we are still going to have planning for things in case they happen. If you don't have them prepared for that and, a natural disaster happens, then you're going to have bodies piled up everywhere. You're going to have to dig mass graves and throw people in them like they did in Haiti and everywhere else. I mean, it's not something anyone ever wants to think about happening. But, I think also we have to understand that let's not get too worked up about these things. Now, that's not to say that things aren't moving in that direction where we're going to see massive death and destruction. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to deny that. So I'm not going to try to downplay it with that. I'm just going to say that, yes, those things may be there, but let's not start getting too worked up and and overreact too much to something that may very well just be a contingency. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about it anyway. But believe me, I think people are going to know when they need to react and when they need to sit down. And that's what they're trying to blur the lines between. They want people to overreact and react to this stuff that they're going to do just to gain the reaction so they can then, come in and use their weaponry and everything else against us.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole FEMA situation is interesting, but, you can look back. What I found kind of interesting about the whole FEMA camp thing is that you take a look at Oliver North, you take a look at Rex 84 and his ties to the CMP, and then you take a look at how this whole culture has been created to be against these FEMA camps and be against this whole concentration camp system, which, of course, I think anybody would be. But it seems like that the people who are pushing ahead the whole concentration camp system are the same people that are also pushing ahead the resistance to the whole FEMA camp concentration camp system. So again, we have another example of how we have a situation being or a topic that's being controlled on both sides. So it's very interesting. But anyway, that's something that people should definitely look into. Let me see what our emails we have here. We have this one here. Okay, this is from Government Shill. Man, there's some strange emails out here, strange names. Let me see here. He's got a few questions. Let me just throw some of these at you, Josh. We got this one. Let's see here. Since there's a lot of Nazi talk tonight, why is it called National Socialism? And where's the exact source for Jones and his ties with Buchanan? I've not been able to find this. Well, as far as the Jones and Buchanan information, there's interviews that he's done with Buchanan that have literally been these softball interviews. You can find those up on YouTube. And National Socialism, well, that was just the political ideology of the Nazis. So I'm not exactly sure how he wants us to expound upon that. But Josh, you want to give your thoughts on that?
Well, National Socialism, if you need to know what National Socialism is, go type it into Google. I don't really have much to expound on the official explanation for what that is. It does kind of seem like some of these emails are time wasters. So let's move across them quickly. As far as Jones' connection to Pat Buchanan, the only proof that you need can come from his mouth. Why don't you call him up and ask him if he indeed did work for Pat Buchanan's campaign in 1996? Because I've heard Alex Jones admit that on his show many times. It's not something that's a secret. It's something he admits to. It's something that he said. That's where he was, the world he was in. So his connections to Pat Buchanan come from the fact that he worked for his campaign in 1996. Now, I don't know if he has any deeper connections with him other than that. But if you're questioning the authenticity of whether or not he worked on his campaign in 96, I suggest you call Mr. Jones and ask him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the links are pretty well documented. But yeah, I mean, all you got to do is just do a little bit of research and you'll find all that stuff for yourself. Of course, the links to his campaign, the interviews. I mean, it's one thing to do an interview with somebody like Buchanan, but if you're just lobbing softballs at the guy, I mean, it pretty much just says everything you need to know about their connection. So there you go. And of course, Buchanan and that ABC news piece saying that he was essentially taught to think by the Jesuits, which is kind of my God, I mean, a very interesting clip. And you can, of course, see that in Josh's film, The Secret Right. It's in the film. So, all right. Well, hey, Josh, we have about 20 minutes left. I don't know. Is there any other topics that you want to get into? I mean, we basically have a bunch of these emails, but I don't know. I mean, it wasn't exactly the result I was looking for. I think we had better questions last time.
What did you get? I mean, did you just get some not good questions, or?
I don't know. I just figured we get some questions that weren't really revolving around white supremacism and things like that. Yeah, I almost felt like some of these questions were just sent just to kind of get us off on these tangents that really didn't really go anywhere. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too paranoid.
No, I mean, I'll tell you this, man. I used to notice that that type of thing happening a lot back when I was doing my show over there on Oracle, or at Oracle Broadcasting there. I used to notice that would happen to me. I'd have people that would call into my show and or they'd say something in the chat room or something. And yeah, they would do just that. They'd get me derailed. They'd get me screaming and yelling about, stuff that didn't really have to do with info or whatever else. And I saw it happen all the time when I was doing a show over there. So, I think that that's, that does happen. People want you to get off talking on these other tangents so that it's less time that you're talking about, the connections to Alex Jones and the Council for National Policy or whatever else. That's really what this serves the purpose of doing. People do it. People have called in my show before and tried to hijack the show. They'll just talk for 30 minutes and won't know when to cut themselves off, and then you cut them off after 30 minutes and they think you're rude. Man, there are a lot of people out there that do try to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but there were a few good questions in there, but some of these questions I just felt were just meant to take us in these directions that really just had nothing really substantive to really get into in terms of everything else that we've talked about. And I was expecting questions more along the lines of current events and topics that we really got into on the show. But I mean, whatever, I guess that's what you can expect from time to time if you just have open emails and open lines and all that stuff. So, there you go. But anyway, Josh, let me see. We got about 15 minutes left. Is there anything else you want to... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was a few things I'd like to get into here in the end, and maybe we'll just... actually, there was something here. Let me go back and find it. I wanted to ask you about, Lee. I wanted to ask you to see if you saw this. Did you see this article about, because it reminded me of something we talked about back during the Ron Paul campaign when you had Ted Anderson and GCN. Remember back when they did the Ron Paul blimp thing?
Yeah, I mean, how much money did that cost? Much it cost a pretty good fortune.
It had to have. Well, check this out. I don't know if you heard about this. I'll send you the article here. Greenpeace blimp buzzes Koch brothers strategy meeting. Did you hear about this?
Yes, actually, I saw that article. Yeah, there was a disruption at this the
Koch brothers.
Yeah, Koch brothers. Yeah, it's either pronounced Koch or Koch. I've heard Koch. But yeah, I mean, these guys have, of course, had ties back to the Cato Institute, the Reason Foundation, and their father, Fred Koch, who was a huge JBS guy, made his money working with oil deals with Joseph Stalin, if you can believe it. Yeah. Some very interesting people to look into, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent like that. Please continue.
Oh, no, I was just saying, it isn't interesting because we know, as you named there, we have the connection to the Koch brothers to a lot of these CMB types and the teabaggers and the rest of them. So I thought it was interesting that they said that, well, let me just read it here. It says that the blimp was coming overhead declaring that the Koch brothers have dirty money. The blimp was the work of Greenpeace, the environmentalist group that last year brought attention to the prominent role that Charles and David Koch, owners of Kansas-based oil company Koch Industries, plays in efforts to discredit climate change theories. And this whole thing just seems like it's staged to me. But the reason that it kind of stuck out as a stage thing, I was thinking, well, the Koch brothers have the money to say, to fly this over and say, oh, look, those dirty Greenpeace hippies are attacking us, blah, 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 blah. And we're the big oil guys and they're attacking us. And then, the connection with the blimp and everything, I was just, kind of looking at that going, wow, that seems odd. But you kind of answered my question there as to as far as what you thought about that. I don't know. I mean, are we going to see, we'll probably see the Alex Jones blimp before it's all over with, huh?
Oh, my God.
Wouldn't surprise me.
God forbid if that happens.
I'll be out there with an RPG.
Well, the thing is that there's no question that it's being set up to be the next Rush Limbaugh. There's absolutely no question. I mean, you take a look at those photos of the guy. I mean, he's basically in a studio similar to Limbaugh. The only thing he doesn't have is the golden EIB microphone. I mean, I wonder where he's going to get that.
The gold-plated RE20. Yeah, that's right on its way.
Yeah, that's on its way. I mean, my God, he's got the expensive suit because he's got to look good.
He did say that.
Man. Yeah, it's all about image.
He did say that. He said, that he's like, folks, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I got to have these donations so I can look good in front of this here camera.
Yeah, just outrageous.
My goodness.
It's outrageous. And people get pissed off because we talk about this.
Yeah, I know. It's like we're not supposed to bring it up. I mean, it's not us, man. It's this guy.
Oh, God. You're being mean to my hero. You guys are bad.
I just, what I thought was interesting was last week on Monday, I had talked about the connections. I talked about on Monday and Tuesday last week, the connections with the symbology to the V symbology of this poster campaign that he had done. The people that want to hear me break that down can go listen to Monday and Tuesday's broadcast of last week at my website, theglobalreality.com. And it was amazing. I'm just amazed at how quickly, Lee, that Jones is having to respond to the things that you and I talk about. I don't know if you saw this video, because I went on my show and started saying that we need to have this campaign against it, but call it V for Vagina. And within 2 days, Jones made a video and he was saying these detractors, they're saying that I put this V up there because it's occultic and all this. I mean, it's like the guy is not even waiting more than a couple of days after we say something to go on his show and run damage control. I mean, are we really hurting this guy that bad?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I guarantee you he's got some of his stooges listening right now.
Oh, guaranteed. So I want to say hi to all the Jones employees.
Yeah, and the Central Texas Command Center?
Oh, yeah, which by the way, if you know this or not, this news article came out of a London paper the Austin paper a couple of months ago about the property that his Central Texas Command Center is located in. This article came out about these big, the most valued, most expensive real estate, some big high rise in downtown Austin in one of the big buildings. And it's the most expensive commercial property in Austin. And it was naming all of the new tenants that they had gotten in this, $14 million deal at their new locations. And when it had a list of all the different new leasers they were going to be having in this building, and one of them was Free Speech Systems, which is Alex Jones' company.
Yes.
And so there it was in the Austin newspaper that there's Jones moving his, operation to some big high-rise office tower. That takes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to operate.
Well, yeah, he's admitted that he's got a multi-million-dollar operation, so I don't think all of that comes from DVD sales.
No. When everybody else is doing this out of their bedroom, give me a break.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all these people that are able to do this full-time for the most part, man, I mean, it's tough. I know you, Josh, I mean, you rely upon your listeners, and I don't think a lot of these other people who are living large, I mean, they're not doing it just based off of their work. I mean, they're getting financing from somebody. Oh, no, there's no question. I mean, especially when you look at, when you trace back where some of these sponsors and stuff go to. And some of these, I had experience back, years ago when I first got into radio, contacting some of these places about being sponsors for them. And I tell you what, to be honest with you, some of these sponsors for some of these Patriot radio networks and stuff and shows like Alex Jones, well, I tell you, I don't know if you've seen this, Lee, or you guys at Oracle have experienced this, but some of these people that you deal with for these sponsors, boy, they are real shady. I mean, they just seem like front companies, like they're not real. Have you experienced anything like that? Well, I haven't really dealt with the sponsors as much as Doug has,
Yeah.
but I can tell you what, I mean, there are some unsavory characters out there. I don't want to mention any names, but
No.
yeah, there are some unsavory characters, and you know, I mean, just because something's advertised somewhere doesn't mean that you should automatically think it's credible. You know, I mean, you should do your own due diligence before you buy a product or anything. Bottom line.
Absolutely. You know, that's the whole thing, because it's such a double-edged sword. Because then again, there are products out there that people have that, you know, somebody just sees it and they go, oh, that's snake oil. That's snake oil. That can't be real. And then you check it out and you go, wait a minute, this actually is real. This actually is a good product. And why is it that all these people are calling it snake oil and people are believing it? So that's a flip side coin of it, is that, you know, not everything is believable, but not everything is snake oil either. I mean, that's where, again, doing your own research, being actively involved in whatever you're questioning, that's the problem. Is people become very convinced of one belief or the other with very little evidence to convince them of that case. I mean, really, people say, well, I don't like this because of that, or I like this because of this reason, or whatever have you. But really, they're not really basing their belief or their opinion on very much evidence at all. You know, so people really jump on board with things and believe it, or jump on board with things and don't believe it based on very limited evidence. And that's very much a testament, I think, to our quick capsule sort of soundbite society. Everybody wants everything in a quick soundbite. They want you. I can't tell you how many times people have said, you know, I need to know this, that, and the other, and I need you to tell me everything you know, and I need you to know everything that you know about your research for the past 15 years, and I need to know it now. And I'm just like, well, it's impossible to do that. You have to jump in with both feet into this stuff and dedicate yourself to wanting to know the real truth. That's what this is about for me. This has always been about this for me. I've never lost the original vision that I want to know the truth. And when you dedicate yourself to this, the truth presents itself to you, whether you want it or not. So
Exactly.
it is a responsibility when you take this on, because most of us, you know, if you would have told me or Lee probably what was going to happen to us 4 years ago and what we've gotten ourselves into now, we probably might not have gotten involved in this, because none of us thought we'd be where we are now. That's just how it happens. And if you want the truth, and that's really what your importance is, then you will go there and you will discuss whatever needs to be discussed, whether or not it's comfortable or not. Just because it questions your hero or whatever else, there are no sacred cows anymore, folks. We are in a red alert situation here where we have to wake up and start taking our own persons back. We need to take our own, ourselves, our self-worth back, everything, because it's being relegated and owned by entities other than ourselves. They program us to believe what they want us to believe. Haven't we had enough of that? I don't think we need any more of that with the truth and the Patriot movement. And so we got to continue to expose. And you're going to ask yourself, what's more important to you? Are you worried about saving some country and some flag and some border and whatever else have you, because that's where you were born and you're a patriotic citizen? Or are you more concerned with the survival of your species? Because I'm more concerned with the survival of the human race than I am the survival of the United States. These are all, I mean, I don't have any allegiance to, one country or the other. I mean, we're all under attack here. Our entire species is under attack, and that's the real problem.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's certainly a lot of problems out there, and none of it is good for free humanity. There's no question about that. Hey, Josh, I got one last email question that came in, and this is actually a pretty good question. I'm not sure if you saw this this music video, but this is posted on a few blogs. But there's actually this new video from, what was it? LCD Sound Systems Powwow. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's basically this MTV-funded video that literally shows like blatant Masonic symbols. You got the Eye of Horus that's being flashed to people to put them under this mind control. You got the square and compass that's literally flashed in front of your eyes. It's a very bizarre video. And then towards the end of the video, all these people that they recruit using the symbol that they're flashing at them, they find their way into a Masonic lodge where there's a representative from the military, the government, all these people. It's one of the most blatant examples of them just flashing all this Masonic symbolism in a music video that I've ever seen. I mean, have you seen this video by any chance?
No, I am familiar with LCD Sound System. I've listened to a couple of their albums before they were at a couple of concerts I went to in Austin several years ago, but I haven't seen that yet. No, but I'll check it out later on.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out. It's very intriguing. I mean, just the symbolism is the most blatant I've seen in any video yet. I mean, that includes Kanye West Power, and there's a bunch of them out there. There's a lot of symbolism in a lot of these music videos that come out. Lady Gaga, of course, is a big one. It's unbelievable, the type of stuff that you see there. And also, there's one other question in here. Let me see. Jay-Z, people like that. I guess the question is, well, he basically says here, is the owner of MTV a Mason? Also, what about rappers like Jay-Z? Well, we know that Jay-Z has given like Masonic symbols and pictures and.
Well, it's actually more than that. Actually, well, Sumner Redstone, first off, from Viacom and MTV. Yeah, Sumner. Just look up Sumner Redstone. I mean, to go type him, Sumner Redstone, Illuminati, Sumner Redstone, New World Order, Sumner Redstone, CFR. Yeah, he's involved in all kinds of elite activities. But what was the other question about?
Yeah, Jay-Z. Yeah, Jay-Z. Yeah.
Well, Jay-Z, what he actually does, his hand symbol that he does, actually, this is what's amazing about that symbol. That actually is a symbol that represents the Levites, the Levite tribe, which goes back to one of the tribes of Israel. They were the priest tribe, and so the white priest. So every time you see Jay-Z give his little hand thing where he puts his fingers together, Jay-Z is giving a shout out not to his people, not to black people, but to the white priests. Thought we wouldn't catch that one, huh, Jay?
I guess he was a little arrogant on that one. But, I mean, how many of his fans and followers are actually going to figure that out? Probably not too many.
There's a great film I saw out there that a guy made called a Freemason or a hip hop's master Mason, Jay-Z, and it gets into a lot of that information. It shows how his albums came out according to what degree that he reached. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, was he involved with Rockefeller Records?
Yeah, Rockefeller Records. That's his label. Yeah. Oh yeah, and he was flashing euros in one of his videos one time.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, it's funny when he was flashing euros. That was when the euro reached like the pinnacle of its worth relative to the dollar. It's kind of funny, but this stuff is crazy. Josh, I could probably talk with you for another 3 hours, but
oh yeah,
I mean, there's just so much information, material to get into. But we're pretty much at the end of the show. Is there anything you want to plug real quick? We got a couple minutes. I mean, anything you want to throw out there?
Just my website, theglobalreality.com. Everything is up there. All my documentary films up there. If people are new to my information, there's tons of video clips from the radio show up there in the video clip section. All my documentary films, which they can buy. There's autographed editions there. They can pre-order The Secret Right Volume 2. Everybody that pre-orders that's going to get a bunch of special bonuses. Everything there to support our work, and it's all at the website. So definitely check that out if you want to know more about me, Josh Reeves. Thanks, Lee.
Okay, hey, thanks for coming on the show, Josh. And Josh, stay on the line. I want to talk to you off air for a little bit.
Okay.
All right, great. All right, folks, that's it for the show. We're just out of time. That was a great 3 hours. But we'll be back tomorrow with, of course, more news, more information on the global enslavement system. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about with everything going on over in Egypt and, of course, the entire news cycle as a whole. So the website's roguegovernment.com. Be sure to check it out. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Take care, everybody.